Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining the University of Toronto's presentation, and in specific, the medical program at the University of Toronto. I don't think you can see my video, but just to introduce myself, I am Hana Lee. I am the Director of Enrollment Services and Faculty Registrar for undergraduate medical education. So my team oversees the students in the MD, MD, PhD, medical radiation science and physician assistant program here at the Faculty of Medicine. In particular today, though, I'm here to tell you a little bit about our Doctor of Medicine MD program. So some of you may and some of you may not be familiar with University of Toronto. U of T, we are ranked #1 in Canada across all major university rankings. And one ranking in particular that may be of interest to you is the recent Global Universities for Clinical Medicine ranking that just came out in 2021. U of T has been consistently ranked in the top 5 places in the world for clinical medicine in the last few years. And in terms of our city, I don't know if today's weather reflects what you see here in the slide here, but Toronto is a beautiful city with a lot of diversity. It's not on this slide, but when Stats Canada ran the data, there's over 140 different languages that are spoken across our city. Just here in Toronto. We're also the 4th largest city in North America and one of the hubs of North America's largest biomed research, education, and clinical care networks. And you'll see how the Toronto advantage really comes through when you see our clinical networks that our students rotate through as medical students. Just in terms of our centennial accomplishment, this is our 100th year in marking the discovery of insulin here at U of T. But before insulin discovery and after, U of T has been a leader in a number of transformative research areas. And I know just in a short bit, just under an hour, you will hear from our faculty members who will speak to some of the research interests and pursuits that they are conducting here at U of T, along with an exciting graduate programs that you may also consider in the master's and doctoral stream here at U of T. In terms of our medical school, I want to tell you that our medical school is offered across 2 campuses. So first, at our beautiful Mississauga campus that sits just above our Credit River Valley, and our downtown St. George campus, where you're really close to not only your hospital networks, but also to a lot of the vibrant city life downtown Toronto. So in terms of our program, our MD program, very similar to the US medical program, is a second entry program. What this means is that you'll need to complete some undergraduate studies. So if you are a US student currently studying in Canada, you can apply as a 3rd-year student. If you are a US student who's currently studying in the United States or international student who's studying abroad outside of Canada, you'll need to apply in your 4th and final year of your undergraduate studies, and comparatively speaking, same thing for graduate studies. And similar to the US, once you complete our Doctor of Medicine program, you will get an MD degree and a professional designation. We also offer our clinician scientist program. We offer the largest MD PhD program across Canada, and our students who go through our clinician scientist pathway are really well prepared to dive into global research topics, but also have good clinical skills and practice experiences out of our MD program. The program itself is typically 8 to 9 years in duration, so 4 years of MD and between 4 to 5 years of the PhD studies, and you are funded for the entire duration of our MD PhD program. In terms of our clinical sites, so this is where, as medical students, you will be rotating throughout your four years. So we have 9 fully affiliated hospitals that are our main core sites. And then of course, 12 community affiliated hospital sites and healthcare sites that make up our education network. What you don't see here is the hundreds of smaller clinics and private practices that our students are also students will also have access to it throughout their 4 years. So you'll have hundreds of clinical opportunities and sites to really choose from when you're thinking about your observerships, when you're thinking about your elective and selective sites. But of course, as a medical student here at U of T in your 4th year, you'll be able to also choose elective and selective locations across Canada and often in the US and other parts of the world as well. In terms of our foundations curriculum, so this is what makes up or comprises of our first 2 years in the MD program. You're really learning about the basic medical science areas in pharmacology, nutrition, and medical humanities. And at the same time, we make sure that you foster the important clinical skills through your standard patient sessions, your case-based learning sessions, and different opportunities. And one of the things that I want to highlight here is that what's unique about our MD program is we really ensure that you can build up your medical knowledge and skills, whether you come from a science or non-traditional, non-scientific background, so that by the time you enter your clerkship years, you're really ready to tackle different types of patient care situations that you'll come across as a third-year medical student. In terms of your first year schedule, a lot of the items that you see on this slide were mostly online in the last year and a half, just because we were going through some of the hybrid learning options based on our COVID-19 responses. So the format will likely remain the same, but beginning this fall, students will be returning to campus to do more of the hands-on experiences, including clinical skills and anatomy lab sessions. And over time, there will be more fulsome return to the campus. But one of the things I want to highlight for you is that there is a rich learning types and activities that you'll be involved all throughout your first year, but also have that option on Wednesdays in year 1 and Tuesdays in year 2. To really take that time off, whether to catch up on your schoolwork or participate in that club activity that you are interested in being involved once you enter medical school, whether it's medical lobbying group, or in our case, there's a musical called Daffodil in our medical school that a lot of our students are a part of. You'll have that time. And in some small number of cases, our students take that Wednesday to pursue another degree, whether it's a master's of public health or master's of engineering, or sometimes some people even take the MBA program while they're enrolled in the medical program. So the Wednesdays are unscheduled times for you in year 1, and then you'll have a similar time on Tuesdays in year 2. In terms of our clerkship, so everything based on what you've learned in the first 2 years, you'll use these knowledges to rotate through our clerkship. So there's 11 different types of clerkship rotations that you'll be part of. And just to give you a sample idea of what those core rotations are, you'll rotate through disciplines like internal medicine, psych, emergency medicine, and so on. And then based on that clerkship experience in third year, you'll really dive into the specialty area of your interest in your year 4. So you typically take electives based on the specialty areas of interest that you likely are considering for residency matching process, and you'll schedule those in the fall. Then you'll go through your residency interview process, and then you'll complete your 4-year degree with your set of selectives. In the past, and this will likely resume again after the pandemic, students have really selected their selective experiences, often outside of Canada, just so that you are able to gain that global exposure and experiences. So that takes us through the MD curriculum. I want to tell you now a little bit more about how to get in. So let's talk about our MD requirements and process. So in terms of our academic requirements for undergraduate students, you need to have at least 3 years of undergraduate studies completed at a Canadian university. If you're in the US, you need to have at least 4 years of study. So in your final year of university degree to be eligible to apply to our program. The minimum undergraduate GPA that's required is 3.6 on the 4.0 scale. So for many of you who are not yet familiar with the OMSAS scale, your US institution, where they land on the scale varies depending on your institution. So if you have not yet checked out the OMSAS scale, I really encourage you to take a look. And if your school is not listed on the scale, to get in touch with the OMSAS team so that they're able to advise you on how to calculate your OMSAS GPA. In terms of the Mcat, the current requirement is a threshold score of 125 in 4 sections with an allowance of 124 in 1 section. And the reason for this allowance is that many times we have seen in the past applicants who have who were so close to meeting our minimum requirement, but just fell by 1 point in one of the sections. And we recognize the cost of rewriting the MCAT, especially now, like when it's difficult to find seatings. It's best that we have this allowance. And so in the last few years that we had this MCAT threshold requirement, students have successfully moved on and have completed years 1 and 2 now, just going into year 2. And so this was a change that we were quite pleased with. And in terms of the prerequisites, we're not looking for like a really specific set of courses. We're looking for 2 full course equivalents in life sciences. And when we say full course equivalent at U of T, we mean either 2 semester courses or 1 full year courses. And so whatever the combination that you choose that make up full course equivalents in life science area, then you'll satisfy the prerequisite requirement. And we're not looking for a particular grade either. You just have to take the course and pass it. And the types of life science course you can choose from really is broad. So I would encourage you to take a look at our website. And if there's specific courses that you're not sure, because it could be either a social science or a science course, send us an email. And we're happy to walk you through based on the course outline and descriptions that you have, just so that you have that in writing. And we also require 1 full course equivalent in any of social science, humanities, or languages. So if you're in a typical 4-year program, likely you will be able to fulfill these prerequisites through your strategic elective selections and things like that. I know many of you are just diving into course selections in the next few weeks. So if you're thinking about, of course, these prerequisite courses and whether they satisfy a requirement, please send us an email and I'll make sure that I drop the email address toward the end before we get into the question and answer period. The graduate requirements are really comparable. The MCAT and prerequisite requirements are exactly the same. The only difference now is that you already have the undergraduate degree. So what we ask from our graduate applicants is for you to have all of your program requirements, including successful defense of your thesis by June 30th of that application cycle. Now, I know there's a lot of you who may be doing post-bac programs or 1-year master's program where it may be ending like more toward the end of July or beginning of August. In these cases, my suggestion would be for you, if you're accepted into the program, to send us an extension request. And if it's reasonable where you'll finish everything in time to start the O week, likely you will receive the extension. So this is no problem. Just send us a note once you're in the program, just in May 2022. In terms of the GPA for our graduate applicants, this is a new requirement this year. Up to this year, we have required graduate applicants to apply with at least a 3.0 undergraduate GPA. Starting from this year, so this cycle, you'll need to have a minimum of 3.3 out of 4.0 as your undergraduate GPA in addition to your graduate work. That doesn't mean, so now some of you who may have been preparing with our last year's GPA requirement in mind, if you have a GPA between 3.0 and 3.29, and there was an extenuating circumstance that impacted you, or there's just various different academic reasons why you did not meet the 3.3, you can still apply. We'll ask you to submit an academic explanations essay instead, so that we're reasonable. We can waive this requirement and allow you to proceed to our file review stage. In terms of the graduate work you're currently doing, based on the information that you provide as part of your regular application, you'll receive a credit based on the level and the status of a graduate degree. So what I mean by the level and status of a graduate degree, if you are in progress versus if you have completed your master's versus your doctoral degree, you'll receive a different academic score, so different credits towards your admissions file review score. And so if you're a doctorate student who has completed everything, but just waiting for your defense versus somebody who has completed their doctoral degree, you'll receive a different credit because of your graduate degree status. In terms of our non-academic requirements, we made a significant change this year. Up to this fall, U of T, we've asked, I think sometimes up to 11 essays, depending on the application stream that you were interested in applying to. We've made a drastic change in our non-academic requirements just already as a part of our multi-year admissions renewal process, just to highlight those changes for you. the changes from reference letters to reference forms. This was already part of our very first phase of admissions renewal, where instead of having referees write a narrative letter about your potential as a physician, we now ask pointed questions to the referees. So please take a look at who can and cannot be a referee just before submitting your reference request. The second requirement we have is our autobiographical sketch. So this is where the biggest change has come in for us. In the past, we've asked applicants to choose 3 activities and expand on those activities across 3 statements. This year, we reduced the number of essays down to 1, and we'll be asking you to choose the one most significant activity or achievement that has really impacted your growth and personal development. This specific wording is built in right into our OMSAS guide and also on our website. And you want to spend up to 500 words to really describe or speak to that activity or achievement. So more often, we'll see applicants really choosing that one activity that they've honed or mastered over a long period of time, and ensure that these 4 attribute clusters are factored in. Some applicants, it may be a group of activities, but leading ultimately to one achievement. So if you were working toward a varsity athletic scholarship or something in a competitive nature, and the individual competitions may be shorter in duration, maybe you'll choose to write about the one significant achievement and your progress or your process getting to that point. So however you decide to pick and choose your activity or your achievement that you decide to feature, we'll ask you to really think about the significance of that activity. And then of course, similar to previous years, these references, autobiographical sketch, and brief personal essays will be evaluated against our attribute cluster. So our rubric will be based off of these clusters that you see here. And finally, our third component, our brief personal essays, are where we will annually ask different questions based on contemporary and sometimes classic topics. We used to ask 4 brief personal essays, but recognizing that the amount of work, right? Just in terms of preparing for just a number of schools and essays, we've really cut down the brief personal essays from 4 to 2. So when you're writing these essays, now what you're thinking about, or hopefully you're thinking about, is ensuring that these 4 attribute clusters are represented across these 2 essays, but individually, specific essay question may not allow you to address all 4 clusters, right? So let's say you're answering a question that is based off of your academic experience, where you want to bring up some examples from your research time. You may not be able to talk about your advocacy or examples that really speak to advocacy cluster. And so as long as the 2 essays as a whole address the attribute clusters across, and we can see evidence of that using different examples, then you're good to go. And I want to stress that, although it's really great to see personal examples in the brief personal essays, it's not a requirement. But, as you're reflecting and adding insights, it always does help to have as much personal examples into all of your work as much as possible, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is to ensure that the admissions committee really get to know who you are, and you're really featuring, right, the unique journey that you have had up to this point. And so although the extracurricular activities or brief personal essays for some of the applicants, because of their pre-med or life science background, may feature similar activities, a type of reflections, or the personal values that you discussed or you demonstrate through these responses may really differ across the individuals. And we're just trying to understand who you are. So don't forget, at the end of the day, to make sure that you're really reading through these essays, trying to feature as much of your personal examples as you can. And whenever possible, to ensure that you get a lot of folks reading into your essays, to ensure that they, no matter who is reading the essay, it's clear to the reader. So our final decision formula have also changed. In the past, we have had 50% of our final decision coming from file review score and 50% coming from our interview score. And I think I've alluded to this before, file review score does include your academic score. So in this cycle, we'll be moving away and using this new formula where 33% of the file review score so 33% will come from the file review score, and 67% of your final score will come from the interview score. So a greater emphasis will be paid on, will be applied to your interview score. But of course, it's important to note that, right, in order to get to the interview interviews, you still need to do very well in the file review process. And so our final ranking, so how we make our admissions offer decision will really be based on your file review interview score this year, with heavier emphasis paid on the interview scores. And this is because based on our, I think now we're into our 8th or 9th year of running the MPIs, we've had really high correlations out of our clinical skills and first year academic success when compared against our interview scores of the past 7 to 8 cycles. So the admissions committee has really decided and are moving toward adding greater emphasis to the interview scores. And so if you're an applicant, in time, we will begin to release more resources and information about how to best prepare for your interviews. In terms of our special application programs, we spoke briefly about the MD PhD program. In order to apply to this stream, it's important for you to submit an essay that describes about your interest, why you want to pursue the clinician scientist career pathway, along with 3 reference letters from specifically your research context that speaks to your potential as a future clinician scientist, and your academic CV that's really research oriented. And we're, as we speak, working on our next webinar with our MD PhD office in August to tell you a little bit more about, how do you prepare for all these elements. So more information about our MD PhD admissions webinar will become available sometime this month. Our Temerty medicine application program is our Black student application program. This is an optional application stream, much like our MD PhD program. And to apply, you would self-identify your ancestry, and then write a BSAP essay. The question is, why are you interested in applying through the Black student application program? And the same admission requirements and standards will be applied as all of our streams. What's really unique though about this program is that we recognize that biases are inherent in everything that we do. So we instead invite and recruit a broad section from our community, including our Black community, to take part in our file review and interview process to ensure that there's an inclusive review that take place as part of our Black student application program. And overall, in the long term, our goal is to make our every aspect of our review process as equitable as much as we can. So we're actively recruiting our file reviewers and interviewers from various sectors in our community, whether they're within and outside of medical education community. Same thing, we have a Temerty medicine application program for Indigenous students as well. This is also an optional application stream where applicants would self-identify their Indigenous status and provide us some ancestry documentation. The applicants would respond to an essay that speaks to their intended connectedness to the Indigenous community. And similar to our Black student application program, we'll have our Indigenous community members partake in our file review and interview process. And this stream also has the same admission requirements and standards as all of our streams. In terms of this year's application process, many of you may be familiar with the common application system in the United States. Similarly, we have the Ontario University's Application Center here in Ontario, where a division within UAC, so called OMSAS, Ontario Medical School Application Service, will support your application experience from the beginning to the end. And it's an online system where you can access our admission requirements, our online brochures, policies about each of the schools' admission process and requirements. And then you can also submit all of your required admissions documentation and responses through this service. In terms of the timeline, the Ontario Medical School timeline tends to remain the same annually. Just to highlight a couple of the critical ones, the application launched at the beginning of July, so this month. And then this application cycle, so you will be able to apply up to 4:30 Eastern time, PM Eastern time on October 1st. And then based on the application materials that OMSAS sends to our way between November October and November, we'll complete our screening. So this is where we will check to make sure that you have sent us everything, including 3 references, whether you've met your Mcat threshold requirement, and then your GPA. And then everybody, based on the screening, the eligible candidates will be sent for in-depth file review. So this occurs between December to February. And many of you will wonder who gets assessed in December versus February. Actually, majority of our files are sent out for reviews in December, and a very small batch go out again in January. And it really depends on how much file review that our rating community were able to accomplish over the winter holidays. And so we really try our best annually to try to ensure that we can send out our invitations for our video interviews as early as possible. That date normally is in late January, so that we can invite you for our interview process, which takes place on a weekend, usually in February, March, and April. And yes, for 2022, we will continue to have our interviews online through our videos. And then based on these file review interview scores, we will be making offers to our candidates on May 10th next year. I know this date falls 9 days after the US response deadline. So for international applicants, the offers will go out in April for an earlier response deadline. And then based on the applicants' responses, then we will welcome everybody to our O week, usually in the 3rd week of 2022. In terms of our student experience, U of T is the largest university in Canada. So being situated in one of the most vibrant cities too, there's really an opportunity and student clubs for a variety of interests. And there's literally something for everybody and anybody. So if you do choose to attend U of T, or if you are able to take a brief tour of the campus in the future, really do walk through to see what some of the environment and student life is like. We have a lot of medical student advocacy and clubs that really focus on medical interests, but also outside of that as well. And so it's outside of the classroom, it's a fun place to be. And aside from the student experience portion, you will also be well supported. So one of the unique features that U of T Medicine offers is our dedicated counseling office. So they're called Office of Health Professions and Student Affairs. And there's 3 sections in this office. So first being career counseling. So from the get-go, you are able to book an appointment with career counselors to talk about how you're going to professionally develop across 4 years. And so whether that's through your career exploration after the self-assessment, if you're thinking about heading down to the US after studying in Canada, like how do you prepare for your USMLE exams? How do you prepare for your ARIS matching process and so on? The second service team that we have under our Office of Health Professions Student Affairs is our academic coaches. Medical school, it's a demanding program. And so many of you in the very beginning, especially coming from a non-life science-based program, may require a brief session with academic coaches, whether it's to develop your individualized study plans. Sometimes you may need a separate assistance in terms of connecting with an accessibility services. And so they offer tailored but also group-based study sessions for you so that you can be successful in your medical studies. And then finally, our personal counselors are here. So in addition to our academic and career coaches, you're able to meet with our personal counselors to go over both urgent and more chronic based interests and concerns so that you can be well and supported all through your studies. So that takes me to the end of our prepared presentations. If you want to read more about our admissions requirements, including the new autobiographical sketch question about your significant activity, our website is the best place to go. If you have specific questions, or if you're not sure if the course that you're about to select meet our prerequisite requirements, send us an email. If you're having a difficult time trying to book your MCAT exam for August and you want to apply this year, send us an email. We haven't been active as much on Facebook, but we have a Facebook account as well. One of the things that, before we get to the Q&A that I wanted to just highlight for you is that on July 28th, we have a next webinar session coming with Twana, who's on this call too today, to go over your questions from this current cycle. I know as you're preparing for that October 1st deadline, you might have a lot of questions, right? Like, how should I prepare for this? What should I say for the ABS? Or how should I phrase this? These are great questions, and we're currently collecting your questions in advance to that webinar. So please take a look at our upcoming webinars. We'll try our best to answer as many questions as possible. And if things that we couldn't answer right during the webinar session, we're happy to meet with you to go over those questions and also develop an FAQ. So thank you so much for taking the time to learn about our program. I'm going to try my best to go through all of the questions that you are sharing over Q&A. If you have a more individual personal questions, you're again very welcome to contact us by email. So I'm just going to stop sharing. Then I'll go through your questions. So the first question is the GPA cumulative? Yes, we currently count any courses that you've taken at undergraduate studies on a full-time basis during fall, winter, spring, summer, pretty much the whole year. And we'll look at all courses. If you have had an extenuating circumstance at any point during your undergraduate studies or graduate studies too, where the academic performance don't necessarily reflect your true performance or true abilities, you're welcome to submit an academic explanations essay to receive special consideration. So the next question is, for prerequisites, is a full course equivalent in social science, humanities, languages fulfilled by typical undergraduate breadth requirements? I think you must be a U of T student. Yes, typically your breadth requirements will fulfill your social science, humanities, and languages requirement. Next question is, what is the evaluation breakdown for applicants pre-interview? So right now, our academic, so the items that you've seen, degree requirement, Mcat, these are currently assessed as screening thresholds. By threshold, we mean that you just have to meet a requirement, and whether you have higher grade in your prereq courses or higher percentile on the Mcat, it doesn't matter because you just have to meet the requirement. The only requirement that is used competitively is your GPA. I hope that answered your question. The next question is, are there a certain number of spots for graduate applicants versus undergraduate applicants? Are master's degree students in their last year considered a graduate applicants? Yeah, this is a great question. I think U of T, compared to many Canadian and US schools, do have higher portion of applicant pool coming from the graduate stream. In the last couple of years, I think we had ranged from between 20 to 25% of our classes coming with a graduate degree. And yes, master's degree students who are in their last year will be treated as graduate applicants. Next question is regarding the Mcat from Esther. Esther asked, does the Mcat need to be completed before you apply, or am I able to submit the Mcat score in January, for example? Esther, for U of T's medical school, all of our submissions are actually due in the fall. Mcat scores, there's a separate deadline for the Mcat for U of T. Last year, it was in November. I know this year we've moved back to the original deadline. So for this year to be eligible to apply, you would have had to write your Mcat by the end of September 2021. Next question was, hi, during the pandemic, it was really hard to gain research experience. Would you recommend waiting an extra year before applying to make sure that we get some research experiences first? This is a really great question. U of T is one of the few schools where research experience is not required. Actually, one of our admissions reps who did a lot of these presentations shared about his experience, Benji, of not having any research experience. We believe that students are able to fulfill and get enriched experiences based off of a whole range of activities that may not be centered on research. You may not have also volunteered in a hospital setting. That's completely okay. As long as, when you take a look at our attribute clusters and you have a different combination of experiences that really diversified your growth. I think that's what we're looking for. There's actually quite a percentage of our class that doesn't have any research experience once they enter. What we'll do is when students are in the medical program, we'll have funded research programs to ensure that you have an opportunity to engage in research to see if you enjoy, and this is something that you want to pursue on top of your clinical work. The next question was regarding interviews. Are interviews online this year or in person? So in 2022, so this cycle's interview period will be still conducted online. The next question was, is this rolling admissions like the US? So in Canada, at least at U of T, we currently offer one response deadline. And so a little bit different from the US, we will not be doing rolling admissions. All the schools across Ontario will be releasing our admissions decisions on one common date so that you can have all of the responses from the schools at once, and then you can make a decision based on where you truly want to go. Your next question was, does it matter if you submit your application earlier or later? It really doesn't. All of our applications are due October 1st. And so after that October 1st, we don't really get any files, truthfully, from OMSAS until middle of October. And so if you need to take all the way up till 4:30 October 1st, it won't make a difference. The only caution that I do provide or give applicants is that you never know what will happen. I think 2 or 3 years ago, there was a crash in the system, and students, they were accommodated later on, but I recall that was a quite stressful time. So if you're able to submit even a couple hours earlier, it probably is better, like in terms of, right, like those unexpected circumstances. So I think this next question I've answered regarding our interviews, that it will be virtual next year. In terms of 2023, that's something we have not decided. And only because we've had such a successful interview weekends when applicants used to visit Toronto just to get to know more about Toronto. We'll consult our current students, our applicant pool based on this year's experience, and make decisions for 2023. And then there is a question about, will there be another presentation? So there won't be another presentation from me. You'll have a chance though at 2 o'clock to speak to our current medical students. So if you're thinking about applying to medical school and want to talk to our current medical students, Hafsa and Hugh will be here again at 2 p.m. And then this presentation will be recorded and become available as well. The next question is regarding admissions committee. Hello, is the admissions committee taking into account the fact that many students were not able to volunteer as much due to the pandemic? Or are the expectation for extracurriculars the same as the previous years? This is a really, I think, good and practical question. I don't know if you were part of, or if you're here for the changes regarding our non-academic requirements. We've actually decided to cut down our autobiographical sketch requirement from 3 statements down to 1. We were always planning to do that because depending on how much access you have to social capital, the variety or types of activities you would pursue would really change, right? Setting an inequitable landscape in the admissions review. So what we've done is to really cut down the emphasis we pay on this, and we'll be focusing on one activity or one achievement that really helped you to develop where you can speak to the various aspects of how this has impacted you. And it doesn't matter if this was based off of your competitive athletic experience, your research experience, or you started as a frontline volunteer to a manager at a soup kitchen. I think the most crucial part is for us to understand how these experiences or set of achievements has impacted you, for us to understand what kind of physician that you aspire to be. So the short answer is no. No, we do not have the same expectations that you'll have the same wide range of activities. No. The next question was, will the changes made in this cycle also apply to future cycles, or is this something that is specific for the 2022 cycle? So what you've seen today, I think you're referring to the decision, the formula we use, 33% coming from file review score and 67 coming from interview score. So this is a permanent change that we predict will be here for at least a couple years, so that we can really study the impact of the interventions that we have introduced through the various stages of our admissions renewal process. So far, we're the changes that we have introduced over the last 4 years have made a significant change in the types of applicant pool that we're seeing and the student successes, and really hoping that the last year, the last phase this year and next year of the changes will allow us to recruit really diverse pool of students who will be successful in our medical program. Next question is from Jason. Jason asked, are there different areas of emphasis for the graduate stream compared for the regular stream? Jason, no, what we look for graduate applicants is a type of where you are in the graduate stream so that we can apply the different amount of credit towards your academic score. Where it might really make a difference is the type of activity or achievement that you choose to write about as a graduate applicant, or as you respond to the brief personal essay. Some of the examples that you bring into the discussions for brief personal essay may have more research-based examples, but the requirements generally across at least the non-academic portion are the same for all of our streams. Can prerequisites be taken during the year of the application? Yep, as long as your courses appear on your transcript. What's really difficult is, I know some of the schools, until you actually start the course itself does not appear on your application. In those cases, you may have to list that you're actually taking them in the academic explanations essay, so that if you do get in, we can actually check back with you to ensure that you've passed those prerequisite courses and can successfully satisfy our admissions condition. The next question is regarding our MD-PhD program. To apply for the MD-PhD program, do I need to have completed a master's? Margaret, no, we actually have a pretty good mixture of students who enter the MD-PhD program directly out of undergrad or after a master's degree. It really depends on how committed you are to the clinician scientist career pathway. If you're interested in learning more about the MD-PhD program, please tune into our webinar in August. The next question is regarding the exchange semester. How are grades from an exchange semester abroad considered in the GPA calculation? So when we typically receive transcripts from undergraduate institutions, the exchange semester for majority of the schools appear as credit, no credit based grades. And so it's really difficult to calculate grades when it's just a credit, no credit grades, right? So I think for some of the medical schools in Ontario, because of this reason, have asked applicants to supply all post-secondary institutions transcripts that you've been a part of, so that if they're calculating the GPA, as these can be factored in. The next question is from Mary. Thank you, Mary, for this question. I was wondering if you have this presentation slide deck forward to us. I'll make sure that you're able to share our slides and our recording after this session. Thank you. Next question is regarding your publications. From Roshanak, the question was, how should first author publication be presented in ABS if it was shared first authorship or my name was not written first? I think in general, like if you just describe, right, if you want to talk about your achievement, right, like which is quite impressive as a first author, if you've contributed to specific elements and you want to discuss that, like you could definitely feature your contributions and the first author publication may be one of the achievements that you list. What we're looking for is, after you describe this achievement, what sort of role you played and how it has impacted your development. So the next question is from another MD-PhD prospective applicant. Would there be upcoming events detailing the MD-PhD program? Yes. So when we follow up to share our slides in the recording, what we can do is to tell you a little bit more about our other upcoming webinars as well, so that if you're interested, you can RSVP and attend. Does U of T offer scholarships for MD? So U of T currently offer scholarships for our domestic students. We offer funding for all of our MD-PhD students, whether you're domestic or international students. In terms of financial aid and bursaries, we offer quite a bit of financial aid and bursaries for our domestic students. Last year, we offered I think just around $6.4 million for our domestic students. We have a very small number of international students. We do also offer financial assistance for international students in extenuating circumstances. And last year, I think we provided just under like for bursaries and aids, we provided just under $10,000 for our students on average. The next question is, are summer courses included in the CGPA? Yes, if you have taken them on a full-time basis. So that's usually about 1.5 full course equivalents. So about 3 semester-long courses. The next question is, I'm preparing to apply next year. Could you give me some resources for preparing my application essay, reference letters, and interviews? And what's the interview process like? So this is a really good question. What I would recommend is that you begin with our website, our admissions website. And then in terms of the interview prep itself, we will actually revamp based on our virtual interview experiences in the last 2 years on how you can consider and prepare for both virtual and on-site interview as part of our blog series. Is MD a rolling admissions? No, for U of T, we actually are part of our Ontario Council of Admissions, and we'll offer one common offer date for applicants. Who do I contact if I need help calculating my GPA for the OMSAS scale? That would be OMSAS. I'm just gonna type the answer for you as well as I speak so that you can get more information. And I have included that as part of my response. The next question is, how does the committee evaluate community college courses and prerequisites? So right now, we only consider university level courses and credits. So if you have started at a community college and you did a transfer and those courses transferred into transfer credits, likely they'll be accepted for their course load value, but we will not be able to calculate or use the course grades from the community college education. The next question is about BSAP. Can we apply through the BSAP 4MD? Yes, and you would do this through the self-declaration on the OMSAS application. The next question is regarding advice for writing an academic explanations essay. Yeah, so typically if you have a point in your academics where your performance truly didn't reflect your performance, right? Comparatively speaking, across 4 years or sometimes longer, if you're a mature student or have done 2 degrees, I would say be very specific about the point in time. So if there is an acute period, or if there is a little bit longer, more chronic period while you're going through your treatment or different dosages or have different personal circumstances, direct us, the admissions committee, to that point in time and let us know specifically the circumstances and how it has impacted you. And we'll also advise that not to submit any supporting documentation through OMSAS, our application platform. When the committee takes a look at the academic explanations essay and require more information, we will reach out to you to request for documentation, but you don't have to submit the documentation when you're completing the academic explanations essay on OMSAS. Okay, so the next question is, how many US applicants are admitted each year? We actually recruit international students from across the world, and each year we'll admit up to 10. But because we use the same admissions requirements and thresholds, we actually don't necessarily try to fulfill all of the allocated seats. So we'll have anywhere between 5 to 7 international students each year, and the students come from a variety of places, including US. So the next question is regarding students who are currently in graduate school. How is a GPA considered? And so we'll take a look at your undergraduate GPA as one bucket, and then we'll give you a credit for your graduate work as well, depending on where you are in the graduate studies and the degree level. So whether you're a master's or PhD student. So what's the average age of first-year students? Oh yeah, so in the past, I think up to 5 years ago, the average age used to be 22. And then in the last 2 years, it's actually shifted to 22.5. And I think this is because we're starting to see students with more career experiences coming back to school, or students with graduate degrees. But the last year, it has been 22.5. The next question is GPA used as a cutoff? Right now, currently, it's used as a competitive requirement. So I have time for 3 more questions. So the next question is, if you already meet the minimum GPA requirement, how would an academic essay influence this situation? So this is, this is a question that would really depend on the circumstances that you had. Perhaps you had 3.8 CGPA, but that one semester in your second year fall really didn't reflect the rest of your degree studies. By that, it could mean that you may have, I'm just using a very random example, had a flood in your apartment where you had a precarious living arrangement for the fall term, making it really difficult for you to attend all of your classes. And your fall term of your second year really doesn't look like the rest of your degree. In that situation, I would recommend students to request for special consideration by writing an academic explanations essay so that the committee, where there is relevant and reasonable requests, they can adjust their GPA for you. The next question is regarding the weighted GPA formula. Is a weighted GPA formula considered? On U of T's MD website, those who took a full course load will be eligible to drop 2 full course equivalents at the lowest grades. Yeah, so this cycle will continue to have the weighting. So the weighting is where we'll take a look at your entire transcript and drop the 2 lowest grades from any year, as long as you took the full course load. So 5 courses during each of your studies. I want to emphasize that the weighting will be gone in the following year. And so there will be no more weighting in the cycle for 2023 entrants. But this year we still will have the weighting. So I think I have time for just a quick 2 more questions. What is the breakdown of international students compared to Canadian students? So there's 259 Canadian students, and then we will admit up to 10 international students, but we don't always reach 10 because we'll only admit top candidates into our medical program. And then the last question is for students who apply after completing a graduate degree, are they given a priority or advantage over undergraduate students? Not necessarily, but you do have, we do have slightly different GPA requirement for graduate applicants. So if an undergraduate applicant is applying with at least 3.6 GPA on a 4.0 scale, graduate applicants can apply with a 3.3 on a 4.0 scale. And on top of that, they will be awarded credits for the graduate work they're completing. So whether you're a master's versus doctoral student, and whether you are in progress of completing your degree versus if you have already completed your degree, you'll get a different amount of credit applied toward your academic score, which is calculated based on your GPA. So I think we're at the end of our session. I know that Natasha's preparing for the next session that is set to begin at 1 o'clock. I'm just gonna take a copy and paste of all of your questions today to ensure that we can answer these at our next webinar, which is happening on the 28th with Twana, who's also on this call today. Or if it's something very specific to this cycle, when we follow up with our presentation, we'll make sure to include responses to your urgent questions as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending today's session. I'm so sorry that we weren't able to get through all of your questions today. Please send us an email. I'm just gonna drop our email address in the chat again. And then I wish everybody the best of luck in your pursuit of medical career. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm going to put Dr. Laura Frappier as a panelist. And I'm going to take you off, Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you, Natasha.
Hi, Lori?
Yep, I'm here.
Perfect. If you can share your screen.
Okay. I don't think I can run my video. It's not letting me, but we can share the presentation. Okay. Is that showing up all right?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. So hi, everybody. I'm here to tell you a bit about the Department of Molecular Genetics and our program, and thank you all for attending this session. So first of all, why might you want to consider coming to the Department of Molecular Genetics? Well, first, we have a lot of outstanding faculty. We're quite a big department, so there's over 100 of us, and people have expertise in a wide variety of areas. And most of our faculty are recognized internationally as leaders in whatever areas they do, and some have won very prestigious awards. We cover a lot of topics. And our website sort of groups us into these 6 general topics. So we cover things like genetics and model systems, molecular medicine and human genetics, cell and molecular biology, microbiology, and computational and systems biology, and functional genomics and proteomics. And many of us span these multiple areas there. We also have cutting edge research facilities. So our department is not located just in one building. We're actually spread out over these 6 centers that you see here. So 2 of them are right on campus, the Medical Sciences and the Donnelly Center. And then the Mars buildings, the Ontario Institute for Cancer Research and the Mars West Tower just across the street. And then just a block or a couple of blocks away, we have the Hospital Institute, Peter Gilligan Center for Research and Learning, and the Lunenfeld-Tannenbaum Research Institute. So they're all close together. So there's no problem interacting and going in between these buildings. And some of them, like the Mars West Tower and the Peter Gilligan Center, they are really quite new. The Donnelly Center is also pretty new. So they're really nice state-of-the-art facilities. Okay, so big concern is, how do you find the right lab for you? Well, our department makes this easy because you don't have to figure that out before you come. So we have a rotation system, which most departments in Canada don't have, and we have you do 3 5-week rotations through the fall, and to sample different labs. So we will, ask you for your choice coming in, and we will set you up with your first lab, try to make it what you wanted, and then you usually pick the other rotations on your own. So you get to sample different things and see what you really like and what kind of environment you're comfortable in. Okay, so what's the environment like in our department? Well, our department is a very engaged and supportive community. So we have lots of students from all different backgrounds. Quite a lot of them are international. They tend to be high achieving in different areas. And we have a very collaborative department. So there's lots of interactions between the labs, which facilitates like a lot of new types of research and branching out into areas that maybe your lab doesn't traditionally do. And also our students are very involved with the department. We have a graduate student association, which you can be involved with if you want to. And they organize a lot of events. Some of them are social events, some of them are career events and things like newsletters. And we involve members of our GSA in decision-making processes in the department. So anything that we're thinking about changing or instituting, we solicit input from our students. It's we find it very important to have our students happy and listen to what they have to say. Okay, so what happens when you complete your degree? Can you get a job after you work with us? That's always important. So our students have gone on to be leaders in a lot of different areas. So some of them are in academia, or they're in other types of research areas. Some of them are in healthcare, some of them are in the private sector or industry. And we have a lot of events where to try to help you plan for your future and your future careers. So we bring our alumni back regularly to interact with you in workshops. Some of these are monthly, and then we have a big annual career event where the students will come back and tell you about where they ended up and how they got there and what things they thought were really useful. And some of these students will have careers that you've never thought of that you would do with your PhD, things like, consulting firms and things like that are not sort of the traditional path. Okay, so what we're talking about for our program is both MSc and PhD streams. So the MSc, if you're applying for an MSc, you would have not been enrolled in an MSc program before. And you have the choice of just completing an MSc degree, which the time to completion is usually between 2 and 3 years. Or you have the option after a year and a half in our program to reclassify into the PhD program and just complete your degree as a PhD student. So then you would keep all that research you did already and just use it towards your PhD. The other thing you can do is apply directly to our PhD program. So this would be for students who already have an MSc degree, but you can also apply what we call direct entry PhD without a master's, an MSc already. If you do that, we do look for slightly higher standards, so higher marks, so a cutoff becomes an A-, and we look particularly at relevant courses for our department and make sure you did well in those. And so that's another option. Our time to completion is about 6.3 years for a PhD degree. And I should mention that if you're, if you think you would like to apply direct entry PhD, but you're now a little worried, like, what if you don't get in? Do you just get nothing? You should know that if we think you're not quite up to, we're not sure that you would do well in a PhD, we can still accept you as a master's student. You don't have to apply to both. We'll always consider you for a master's degree if we think you're not quite at the level we want for direct entry PhD. And I should also mention that we have a version of our PhD, which we call a Computational Biology track. So if you have a strong computational background already and you want to focus on that kind of area for your PhD, then we have a specialized program that you can do with us. All right, so money is important. And so we have a guaranteed stipend. These are the numbers from last year. They'll be similar this year. They usually go up a little bit. So we pay our master's students just like $30,500, PhD just under 33. And if you're an international PhD student, it's slightly more because you have to pay a medical fee, which is called UHIP, and so we add that in. We pay you that, so you're not out the money. From this stipends, you pay your tuition, which is the amount shown there, so a little under 8,000, and then so that leaves you with a living allowance, as shown there, just under 23 for a master's and about 25 for a PhD student. The one thing you'll notice there is the tuition. If you're an international master's student, the tuition is very high, and this is not set by the university. This is something the province has set, and as a result, your supervisor would have to pay you that extra money so that you can pay your tuition. And as you might guess, that kind of limits the number of people that take international master's students. They're more likely to take international PhD students. All right, so how do you apply? Well, if you visit our website, there's a link there that gives you all the details, and you'll end up applying through the School of Graduate Studies, not directly at our department. Most of our students enter our program in September, and so we have 3 application dates for that entry, which are shown there. November 15th is the early one, January 15th and May 1st. So you can apply for any of those application dates, doesn't really matter. And we also do take some students entering in January. It's a much smaller group. If that's of interest, you apply for September 15th deadline. All right, so what is in your application? Well, there's a letter of intent. First of all, we want to know why you're interested in doing such a degree and why you're interested in our department, and what your sort of long-term goals are. And this is a place where you can also explain if you just had a gap in your training or you had a bad year with marks, you can write us some explanation there. We of course look at your transcripts, so you have to have strong marks, and this is minimum B+ average for the master's program, and I said a little higher if you're doing direct entry PhD. And we look in particular at courses that are relevant for a program like genetics, biochemistry, molecular biology. We like you to have a practical lab experience. This used to be an absolute requirement for us, and we've backed off on that in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. We appreciate that it's been much harder for students to get into labs and do lab experience. But if you've been able to do some summer work or research projects in a lab, that's great. That's what we want to hear about that. If you were not able to because of COVID, that's something you could mention in your letter of intent, that, you know, maybe you had something lined up and it got canceled because of the pandemic. And then finally, of course, you need letters of reference. We need 2 letters of reference, and it's important to pick those carefully, because if you were just in a big class and got an A, you know, a faculty member writing that you got an A in their class is just not useful to us, because we can already look at your transcript and see you got an A in the class. So you want to pick someone who knows you a little better. Maybe you've talked to them, they know you ask good questions. You know, also if you've had any practical experience in a lab, that's the person to ask the faculty member to write you a letter there. And then the last thing is the CV. Okay, so if you want to learn more about our department, you can look at our website. We have a lot of information there, and then we have links to the GSA website. They have their own website, which is helpful, and there's Facebook page. There's social media, different types of social media that we're on, and talk to our students. If you know, you want to reach out to any labs or students, they'll be happy to talk to you directly. And then at the bottom there is one of our faculty members, Thomas Hurd, does a lot of these recruitment events. He's actually away today, so I'm doing it. But he's happy to answer your questions if you want to email him directly. Okay, and then so that's it for my bit.
Okay, thank you, Lori. The next is grad student Michelle Dubinsky and Dr. Vasudara Venkateswaran from Institute of Medical Science, and I'll give you panelist privileges.
Amazing. I'm just going to share my screen. 1 second. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Oh, of course, I'm on the last slide for some reason. Here we go. So thank you so much for having us here today. We're really excited to talk to you about the Institute of Medical Science graduate programs and the admissions for this. So the Institute of Medical Science is quite a large department in the Temerty Faculty of Medicine. And I just want to start off by quickly showing our leadership team. Here with me today is Dr. Vasudara Venkateswaran, who is one of our graduate coordinators, and she'll be happy to answer any questions in the Q&A session. We also have a great staff and administrative team, and I want to point out Ms. Hazel Pollard, who is our admissions officer, and so any questions after this session can go to Ms. Pollard, and on my last slide you'll see her email address. So the IMS is a graduate student program in medical science that falls under the umbrella of the School of Graduate Studies. So if you think of the umbrella, we have all the different departments that are speaking to you today in the Temerty Faculty of Medicine. The Institute of Medical Science is the largest program under this umbrella, and we do all types of research, from basic wet bench research to clinical research. So we really pride ourselves on the diversity, breadth, and depth of research that is being done in the department. We have many unique characteristics. So as I mentioned, we're large, the largest graduate unit in the SGS Life Sciences Division, which is both in terms of faculty and students. We have a bench to bedside or translational research model. Basic research is also done, but all of our work has links to disease mechanisms and links to health and wellness. We are considered to be an institute without walls, and this is because students and faculty are widely dispersed across U of T and affiliated hospital and research institutes. So I'm going to show you that here. Our students are mainly in affiliated teaching hospitals, and so a list of many of the teaching hospitals are here, including the Hospital for Sick Children, which is well known worldwide, U of T campus, St. Michael's Hospital, which is a well-known trauma center, and the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, just to name a few, are where we have our faculty and students poised. So what do we offer? Well, today I'm talking to you about the research stream, which is an MSc or PhD. These are thesis-based graduate degrees in medical science that lead to, again, a Master's of Science or Doctor of Philosophy. These degrees have a strong emphasis on scholarly research, and so we are known to be a course-light program. There are other programs that are course-based masters, whereas we have minimal courses and maximal time for your research. So this is very key if you're interested in research, to have lots of time for that. We also have a wide range of multidisciplinary research areas, as I mentioned before, but all are focused on medical science and helping patient outcome in the long run. So here are some of our fantastic faculty members. I want to direct your attention to just a few of them. Dr. Mohammed Mamdani, who is the director of the Temerty Center for AI in Medicine. And he is very cutting edge. His research is very cutting edge because it's all about AI in medicine. So this is definitely a new and emerging field that is getting great traction. We also have Dr. Aisha Lofters, who is a chair in implementation science. She is at the Peter Gilligan Center for Women's Cancers. And health promotion and equity in women's health is her area of focus. So these are just a select few of our fantastic faculty members. For example, our faculty members have Orders of Canada, as well as our directors of lung transplant programs, etc. So all of these are a selection of our fantastic faculty and researchers within the department. Now, I talked to you about the faculty, but who are our students? So about 14% of our students are licensed medical doctors. 16% are international MDs. So yes, we do take international students, quite a few. But the majority of our students are 70% have a bachelor's or a master's with no health professional training per se. We do want highly motivated, academically accomplished students who have a passion for research and exploration. Again, that research focus is a big must for our program. So not only does graduate school train you for research, but also in our program, you are trained through research. So research methods, ethics, results, publications, and things are a given in graduate school, but in the IMS, you are also trained on things like soft skills or employable skills, I like to say, decision-making, problem-solving, critical thinking, teamwork, leadership, etc. So all of these skills will be helpful to you in the future from your grad degree. So now for the program requirements. The MSc program, we require a 4-year honors Bachelor of Arts or Science or an MD from a recognized university. And for the PhD program, there are 2 ways to get into this program, with a previous master's degree or direct entry. So with the previous master's degree, it needs to be a research-based master's with a written and defended master's thesis dissertation from a recognized university. For direct entry, very similar to the MSc, but what we want to acknowledge is that there's outstanding publications as well as research output in many ways to go one step beyond. Now, as was mentioned for molecular genetics, the master's program, after about 18 months, you can decide to transfer. What this means is you would go from being in the master's classification to the PhD, and you would continue, and at the end of your degree, get that PhD. So there is the option to transfer as well. So now for the research-based, here's what we require for admissions, and I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. So academic achievements, a 4-year honors BA or BSc, as we mentioned, with a minimum A- average in 3 out of 4 years. It's important to mention that you must have an A- average in your final year, and that's because those 4th-year courses are very relevant to your master's program. Letters of reference. We require 3 letters of reference from faculty members at a recognized institution that are familiar with things like your academic achievements, personal attributes, and especially research experience. We definitely want at least 1 research reference because they know how you will be in a research setting and in a research environment. So that's key for us. A letter of intent is your opportunity to highlight goals and aspirations, what you would like to do in your master's or PhD program, as well as supervisors you've reached out to. If you in 1 year had low grades or a low GPA, you can let us know if there were any pertinent information to your application. So this is really where we get a bit more of a feel for you, not just transcript, CV, etc. Tell us what you're interested in, why you want to be part of the program. Then an interview is potential for applicants. They may be invited to an interview with an IMS graduate faculty admissions committee member, but not all applicants do have this requirement. So it will depend on the admissions committee. So just a quick FAQ, do I need a supervisor? You do not for a master's program. Domestic master's based on the merit of your application. So it's great to always start exploring opportunities with supervisors early on, get that research experience, and we can accept you without a supervisor. There's also a document posted on our website, and Dr. Venkateswaran posted in the chat our website, that are faculty looking for new students. So it's a great place to start, but we also have a fantastic faculty tool that tells you all the faculty members in the department based on their research interests. I'd like to point out that PhD and international students must have a supervisor when they apply. So now application deadlines. Online application for September admission is February 1st, and then it's rolling until June 1st. So documentation must be in by June 15th. The earlier you submit all your documentation, the earlier you will get a reply from us. Now the January admission cycle, online applications are due on October 1st. For international students, it's a bit different. We have a March 1st deadline or a September 1st deadline. So I just want to talk briefly about our students very quickly. So we have IMSA, the IMS Student Association. And so not only do we pride ourselves on research, but our students are involved in everything. For example, I'm giving you this talk today and I'm a PhD student here. So we definitely get students involved in many aspects of the IMS to enrich the graduate experience. Another example is the Ims Magazine, which is a student-run publication, highlights all types of research in the department and is a great way to get involved. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. Here's our website, and I'm happy to answer any questions with Dr. Venkateswaran at the end of the session.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to, unfortunately, Dr. Joseph Ferenbok didn't make it. So if Dr. Erin Stiles can be on board right now, and I'll share your screen, give you panelist, Erin.
Oh, okay. Natasha, it says unable to start video because the host has stopped it. So I will just proceed without video like everybody else has been. And you'd think by this point I would be better at sharing my screen, but here we are. Sorry for my technical delays. Okay. What have I shared? I'm so sorry. Apparently I don't know what I'm doing today. Can we see slides?
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to do a presenter view. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just want to play it. All right. Can we see what we're looking at here?
Perfect.
Oh, thank you. All right. So hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience as I figured out how to share my slides. You'd think by this point in the pandemic, I would be excellent at Zoom, but apparently I'm still green at this. Thanks for sticking around. I'm Dr. Erin Stiles. I'm the director of the Masters of Health Science program in Medical Genomics here at U of T, and it is my great pleasure to have the opportunity to tell you about this program. So before we just launch right into talking about the program, I would just love to talk about the field for a second. So the study of genomics represents the ability to understand and interpret and then really harness the information that's contained in our DNA. This is a really rapidly growing area, and it has far-reaching implications from the lab bench all the way to the patient's bedside. And medical genomics is this emerging clinical discipline that relies on using that genomic information from an individual to help inform decisions about their clinical care. And so technical advancements in that relatively new field are really driving us towards this new era of healthcare. So we know that this field is just exploding right now. We know more about the human genome and how our genetic information impacts our health than ever before. But the really fast-paced nature of these advancements is creating this widening knowledge gap between cutting-edge genomics research, like what we've been hearing described, what's happening in labs, and what's happening in current clinical practice, what we're actually seeing and being able to share with patients. So why would you do a master's in medical genomics? So in collaboration with policymakers and researchers, industry, and healthcare leaders, we've identified that there's this emerging need for laboratory professionals and for clinicians who can generate, integrate, and interpret genetic and genomic data. And that's really what this program, this MHSC in medical genomics, is situated to provide. So we place our graduates right at the vanguard of genomic medicine. And so we're really oriented towards a new way of thinking about research and clinical science, where genetic and genomic data are being routinely collected and analyzed across a huge range of different kinds of patient populations and for many different medical reasons. So our mission is to provide our students with unique training and learning opportunities, to teach practical and theoretical aspects of modern genetics and genomics with a really strong focus on direct clinical applications, and to give our students directly actionable skills and career-enabling experiences. The program fundamentally consists of a core set of lecture, discussion, and project-based courses across a 2-year program duration. And notably, there is no graduate thesis. So that's a major difference between this type of professional program and a lot of other graduate programs. There's more information about all of our core courses on the program website, but in brief, students are going to take 2 high-intensity classes at a time, as well as 1 longitudinal modular course that we're calling Future Directions in Medical Genomics. So as you can see here, our first year is dedicated primarily to core competencies, while our second year focuses more on big picture and application courses. And we culminate in this capstone practicum. So the type of practicum projects that our students end up placed in are really, really varied, but in general, they fall into 4 major categories. Clinical diagnostics is one, clinical research is another, work in the biotech and startup sector is a third, and the final is policy work in government agencies. So what can our graduates do, and how are they really addressing this knowledge gap that we've identified in our healthcare system? Obviously, that's a pretty important question for you if you're thinking about grad school. We know that our grads are ideally suited for work in clinical diagnostics facilities and in research labs. And there, they're really implementing the tools of genomic medicine and filling a major and growing need in the realm of genome and variant analysis and annotation. We also know that our grads are really attractive to publicly funded enterprises and to private companies that are generating and interpreting genomic data. And that can either be for direct-to-consumer delivery, so things like 23andMe, or for the clinic. We know that based on our program's really strong emphasis on both verbal and written communication, our grads are suited to a variety of science communications, project management, and consulting and health policy roles. Some of our students enter into the program already clinicians, or they're well on their way to becoming clinicians. And so those clinical grads are either already established in their professional practice, or they're on a pretty clear clinical trajectory. And so we expect those students to finish the program and then go on to complete their clinical training or return into their existing clinical practice in some kind of new genomics-oriented capacity. And then, of course, some of our students decide to pursue further education in a variety of areas, including attending medical school, going into genetic counseling, or pursuing a PhD, among other opportunities. So this degree really allows grads to address an observed need in both the lab and the clinic-facing sides of the field of medical genomics and really enable new kinds of career paths. And that's something I'd like to just zero in on for a minute. So I opened this sort of info session by suggesting that this program is geared towards this new era of research and clinical science. And I just want to circle back to that idea. So in both clinical and in research labs, we know that genetic and genomic tests are really a growing component of the data that's used to guide clinical treatment and research. And so these tests have progressed from looking just at single genes towards panels of multiple genes, and then onto the collection of whole genome data. And so as we've been making that move, there's this subsequent increase in the complexity, both of understanding those results and also of communicating them. So I just went through a couple of the career opportunities in this field that we know exist right now that our grads are well suited for and have been hired into. But because this field is changing so much and so fast, in addition to all these possibilities on this slide right now, we also know that we're training students for jobs that don't even exist yet. So hopefully I've piqued your interest a little bit, and now I'm going to talk very briefly about our application process, specifically who are our ideal applicants, and how should you apply? So what can you do to prepare? And I'm also going to take this opportunity to highlight that all the information that I'm about to share can be found on our program website, which is right here, moleculargenetics.utoronto.ca/medical genomics. So the MedGen program is really the first of its kind in Canada. And one of the things that makes us really special is that we're a dual stream program. So we accept students into either a clinical stream or a lab stream. And in a very general sense, to get into the clinical stream, applicants must have completed a PharmD or an equivalent degree in pharmacology or toxicology, a PDEP accredited BSc in food and nutrition, a nurse practitioner grad program, at least 1 year of an undergrad med degree while remaining in good standing with your medical school, or completed a full recognized MD program. And then to enter into the lab stream, applicants must have completed a 4-year BSc in a relevant discipline. So I've listed a few here that we know are a good fit, but this is absolutely not an exhaustive list of majors that you should apply on. And there's a lot of flexibility actually in this academic history, especially if you've been working professionally in the field. So if you have any questions about your eligibility, feel free to ask me during the Q&A, and I'll post my contact information at the end if you want to ask some questions. So the idea is that these two student streams move through the program as a single cohort. For the most part, they take all the same classes, they engage in all of the same activities. And the idea is that this shared training environment allows students to better appreciate the role of genetic testing on both medical practice and on laboratory work. And it really enables an experience-based discussion as these two different streams provide different voices and different perspectives in our classrooms. In terms of actually applying to the program, pretty much everything you need to know about how to apply to the MedGen programs on our website in 2 different major locations. So details about our admissions pipeline are available here at moleculargenetics.utoronto.ca/medicalgenomics/admissions-1. I know that's a little bit of a mouthful. More specific instructions covering how to apply and what to submit with your application are provided here. So the front end of that URL is exactly the same, /medgen-app-proc. So I encourage you to check those links out. And if you have any questions about applying, I'm also going to post our contact details at the end of this deck. So pretty soon, at the beginning of September, we're going to start recruiting for the class of 2024. And we're really looking for people who are excited about genomic medicine and who want to get the training that they need to be ready for this huge gap that's going to need to be filled right at the intersection of genetic and genomic research, clinical practice, informatics and data analysis, bioethics, and new biomedical technology. So these industries are all changing really fast, and new ones are growing to accommodate the changing landscape of genomic medicine. So we have every reason to believe that some of the most in-demand jobs for our grads 2 years from now are going to be the ones that are only just being developed to meet the needs of this really exciting new field of medical genomics. So we know there's a need for people with this kind of education, and we're going to give our students the tools that they need to situate themselves in this field, to solve problems in this field, and to carve out really interesting, fulfilling careers for themselves in a bunch of different areas. So I'm going to end there by saying that the graduate applications for the new class start date are going to be opening on September 1st. If you have any questions about how to apply, about connecting with references, or about the program in general, I would really encourage you to reach out. So I posted my email address here, erin.styles@utoronto.ca. And our administrative team is manning the medicalgenomics@utoronto.ca account. You can also find our program on Instagram at U of T Medical Genomics or on Twitter at U of T MedGen. And I would also encourage you to dig around on our program website. So the URL is www.moleculargenetics.utoronto.ca/medicalgenomics. And if you want a more student-focused perspective, I would also encourage you to check out our student-run blog, which is uoftmedicalgenomics.blog.home. So that's it for me, Natasha, and I'm happy to answer any questions during the Q&A.
Oh, thank you, Erin. So Joseph didn't show up, so you'll stay on as a panelist, and I'll get the others on as well to answer questions. So if any students have any questions, please post it in the Q&A or chat box, and we'll get to you as soon as possible.
So I'm seeing a question from Gabrielle. Does the program accept and accommodate students with disabilities? I'm not sure which program you're talking about, Gabrielle, but the MedGen program absolutely does make accommodations, and students can register with U of T's accessibility services.
So there's another question. Questions are coming in. Sorry if this question is not very relevant. I'm working in protein sequencing field as bioinformation. I'm curious about how transferable the skills of amino acid sequencing is to genetic sequencing field.
I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that that question is also for me. Yeah, probably pretty relevant. I'm sure a lot of the hard and soft skills that you've honed as a bioinformatician in protein seq would be really, really easily applicable to gene sequencing.
There's another one. When you say a 4-year bachelor's degree, what if we finish early? Like we took 3.5 years to finish by taking summer courses.
Oh, yeah, that's the same. That would count as a 4-year degree. What we mean is the number of credits that you've completed.
And that would be the same for the Institute of Medical Science too. So.
Do life science research experience in different fields than the program we are applying to still count and valued?
I believe so. What is more important is if you're applying to a research-based program, it's more important that you have some research exposure. So whether you're doing it in life sciences or in a different arena should be fine.
Is there any other questions, anyone? Please post it in the Q&A chat box. Here's another one. For the January admission, is it January starting 2022? Are you eligible for this if you're still in your undergraduate degree?
Yes, as long as at the time of admission, before you start your January entry, you have completed your undergraduate degree.
Okay. Or any other, okay, I have a question here. If you don't get admitted for the first time, will that affect your application for the following year? Questions, okay, that's for the MD program, right? If we're in a research-based master's, does our research count towards our GPA?
I'm not sure what exactly you're implying, but I guess that a lot of students do projects, whether it's 3rd or 4th year projects, and they do get evaluated on that. So it is important that an assessment on your research and a grading it's good.
If you have research experience but did not do a thesis in your undergrad, would this still be considered?
Absolutely. I think what is more important is you being exposed to research, whether it's summer, and I think many of the programs also talked about it. So it's not necessarily you're doing a 4th or 3rd year project. It's helpful, but being exposed to research and getting that kind of valuation or maybe one of your referees being able to comment on you is more important.
For molecular genetics, it wasn't clear. Are international students eligible for lab rotation?
Yeah, the international students. So first of all, I should mention too, when you're applying as an international student, you have to line up a sponsor. So you would have to talk ahead to a faculty member who's willing to sponsor your application. And once you enter the program, you would still do the rotations. And then you can decide not to go to the person you sponsored you if you want. It's up to you.
For GPA requirements, is more weight given to the last 60 credits of the undergraduate degree or to all 120 credits?
Is that for, I don't know if that's for molecular genetics or who that's for, but I mean, for us, we put more weight on the upper years. You know, if you had a sort of bad year or two at the beginning, but then you clearly brought those marks way up, that means something to us. We do not like to see the reverse. Maybe you started off well and then you got poor marks in fourth year. That looks a lot worse to us.
And that would apply to the Institute of Medical Science too, because most of the time students, when they're starting, the year one is fairly rough, or, you know, sometimes year two, they could have had some concerns and issues. And so what we're really focusing on is the upper level courses.
Among the master's program graduates, how many go on to pursue a PhD? Are there many who do fast track to PhD during their master's?
Well, for molecular genetics, yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but it is quite a few of our master's students that transfer into a PhD program. A lot of them are interested in PhD and they're just a little unsure. They want to give some time to try it out before they're right into a PhD program. But it's probably more than half of them that do reclassify to the PhD.
Yeah, and that would be our numbers too. And not necessarily, because in certain situations, what happens is that they start off in a master's program, but the research may not exactly be what they want to do, but they still want to pursue a PhD, in which case they complete a master's and come back and reapply for the PhD program.
This is a general IMS question, but the PDF list of supervisors are those recruiting for September 2021. Since it's a 2 years master's, are we assuming the list is going to stay the same, or will it update based on availability?
The list is being updated, and right now we have posted it for 2021 September because acceptances have gone out, and at the time of admission, since you do not need a supervisor, there are supervisors as well as students actively recruiting. I mean, supervisors actively recruiting students, and also. And so, yes, once the September admissions has been completed, we will be updating that list. And it's possible that some of them could stay on, or we would have more additional members.
Given the pandemic, will remote summer research experience still be considered relevant when applying to a more wet lab focused program?
I think what is important, it's a bit different, because when and I'm speaking particularly based on the Institute of Medical Science, the two parts of the application. One is your application process and you getting accepted to the program, and then you finding a supervisor, which is and you being registered in the program is contingent on you finding a supervisor. So even if you hadn't had the kind of experience, what you're looking, what maybe if it's a remote kind of research, but you're interested in getting into a vet lab, that's something that you need to actually connect with the supervisor to see if they're okay to take you. And this is where, students get accepted to the program, and they do spend a couple of months in a lab to see whether that's the kind of place they want to be in, and whether the research the research that you're planning to do really fits in with what the supervisor is also looking for. So yes, your remote summer experience does count, but it depends on how you're able to find a supervisor to work with them.
I mean, for molecular genetics, it does count. It's not, quite the same as being in the lab. Obviously, it's a little bit different, but I mean, we do have a number of computational biology labs in molecular genetics. So obviously for them, that would be just fine. And for us in general, looking at admissions, if you had your own project and it was just like a computational biology kind of project, it still sort of shows some initiative that you took the lead on something, you learned about it. So it's a positive for us.
Okay, so Vazu's gonna answer that medical science question, okay? Do undergraduate biomedical capstone project help with applications?
Not positive who that question is for, but from the perspective of the MedGen program, any opportunity that you've had to sort of demonstrate that you are interested in research, that you're responsible, that you can take initiative and show some leadership, like we would absolutely consider a biomed capstone project as something really exciting on an application.
Okay. How strict is the 3.7 GPA minimum for the molecular genetics direct entry PhD?
Well, you know, we do tend to stick to it. I mean, we do look at the whole application as a whole, though. There's no, you know, sort of computer that throws you out because you don't meet that GPA. We are, you know, a panel of people that actually look at your whole application. So you know, we do make considerations. We have to meet the minimum requirements set by the School of Graduate Studies. We can't get around that, but our standards are slightly higher than that. So we can make some exceptions if, you know, we think you have something that really stands out in another area.
Will winter 2020 grades be considered for any of the programs?
For the MedGen applications, we're gonna look and see what kinds of classes you're taking in winter. Oh, winter 2020. Yes. Yes, for MedGen, we would definitely care about the winter 2020 grades. I know a lot of the schools were doing pass-fail, and you know, we're going to be assessing those grades holistically because the remote switch and the emergency switch was very chaotic, both for you as students and for us as faculty. So we're going to try to be really understanding about your grades from last year. But we will look at them and, you know, weigh them relative to the rest of your transcript, of course.
And we would be that too, but also we want to look to see how you're performed overall and whether it's the one-off grade that has been superb or the one-off grade which has been an issue. So and just wanted to reiterate also that we look at the application as a whole. There are so many aspects to the application, and GPA is also one of the factors.
Okay. Could you be more specific about the future career possibilities? Is the emphasis of skills on data interpretation?
I think this might be a MedGen question, and if it's not, please correct me. The reason I'm a little vague is because the career possibilities for our graduates are very broad, and so we've graduated 35 students so far, and I think they're in 35 different jobs. So a lot of our students end up going into clinical research and clinical diagnostics, and so their job titles would be things like variant analyst, curation expert, things like that. And so what they would be doing there is working with the raw results from genetic tests from a hospital and trying to figure out what is the causative issue with that patient's DNA that might be leading to whatever illness they're having. A lot of our students go into that, and they might be doing it from a very, so from cancer genetics perspective or from a rare disease perspective and working in pediatrics. Some of them will get really excited about bioinformatics and be tackling these issues from very bioinformatics and computer science oriented perspective. So a lot of our students go into roles like that, really dealing with data from genetic and genomic tests. But we also have students who have gone on to work at the Ministry of Health, dealing with sort of the policy around genetic tests and which genetic tests we can order and pay for in Canada. We have students working at Alumna in commercial development. We have students who have gone on to be medical writers. Like, our students are all over the place. So whatever you're interested in, if it falls under the umbrella of clinical or medical genetics or genomics, you may be able to get there with this program. And if you think you might be able to, you should reach out to me and we can chat.
Okay. Are there any additional challenges besides funding and finding a sponsor for international students?
I think the two most important things have been highlighted.
Okay.
But it's not about being a challenge, but given the situation, it's about being able to get access into the country.
I'm planning on applying to the MoGen Master's Program in November for the September 2022 admission, but I won't have my 4th year grades on my transcript by November because I graduate in May 2022. Will that negatively affect my application?
No, we can conditionally accept you, and then we will, the final acceptance comes after the final grades come in. But if your grades are good up until then, you'd get an acceptance, but they're always conditional on seeing your final grades. Like, let's say you dropped out, never finished your degree or something, that would negate the offer.
Is the GRE required?
Is GRE is it necessary to write GREs for our department? Is that the question?
Yeah.
No.
If we apply to direct entry PhD and somewhere along our PhD, we realize that we want to do a master's instead, can we switch?
Yes, you can switch. We call it declassification. There's a form we fill out and you switch back to a master's.
I would say if you're really uncertain about doing a PhD direct entry, get into a master's, see how it goes.
Yeah, that's the recommendation.
Transfer, because it's a hassle actually to declassify into and nobody wants to do the paperwork.
Do you consider retaking courses for any grad? Okay, never mind. Grad program?
Retaking graduate courses, or you mean retaking your undergrad courses to up your marks?
You mean?
I think that's what it means.
Or failed courses? Is that what you're trying?
Do you consider retaking courses for any grad program? So I guess, yeah. It says anonymous attendee, so I'm not sure who it came from.
Yeah, maybe I can just comment briefly. I don't know whether this is really, I'm addressing the question, but students take additional courses after they graduate, which is a non-degree courses. I'm not sure about the retaking. Retaking is when you failed a course and you're trying to take it, but students do take courses, additional courses, to make up for their the years that they haven't done well. So that's fine, and we don't look at it as a negative thing, but I'm not sure whether that's the question that you're trying to ask.
Okay. Next question. What is the minimum GPA for, okay, that's medical school, never mind. How are the courses from a 5th year considered for any of the programs? Never mind, that shouldn't be. For medical genomics and molecular genetics, okay, for molecular genetics, if we are interested in having our 4th year grades seen when applying, is it better to apply in January after first semester of 4th year is completed as opposed to applying in November?
Oh, yes, if you want us to see, or like you think you're doing much better in 4th year, then if you apply in January, we should get your marks for the first term at least, so then we'd see them. Otherwise, we're not going to see them. If you had some rough years earlier, it might sway us to decline you.
Our GPA in part-time summers, 1 FCE only, still considered as part of the CGPA?
I can just comment briefly on that. Apart from, we're looking at 3.7 or 80%, 3 out of 4 years, what's also important is that you're doing a full course load and not spreading out and doing courses 2 at a time over the set period, maybe around 5 or 6 years. So sometimes students do take summer courses, but that would be a standalone if it's going to be just one credit that doesn't get counted as 1 year of GPA.
Okay. Any more further questions? Oh, here's another one. I'm currently a rising third-year international student, and I will be completing my undergrad education in India. Will my application still be considered since my undergraduate education has been completed outside US, Canada, UK?
I believe this is for the MD program.
Okay. Is it possible to fast track and complete the master's in 1 year?
No.
No, not in our department.
The master's is a 2-year program, and students do sometimes tend to complete it a month or two early because you're getting into medical school, and one of the requisites is that you need to have graduated. But if you're thinking about fast tracking a program for 1 year, it's not possible. You have to be registered for 6 sessions.
Do third and fourth year need to be full-time?
I would say no, but I would also encourage you, if you're comfortable with it, it's not a prerequisite that it's full-time, but if it's not, you may want to take the opportunity in your letter of intent to address why it wasn't, just to offer some perspective on why you weren't a full-time student.
If we finish our bachelor's in 3.5 years, does our GPA get calculated using our first 3 years? So fourth year courses won't count?
I think this question was addressed before, that it's the number of credits that you achieve rather than the number of years. But so if you're in the fourth year and you're still in the program and you've not graduated, so yeah, your fourth year will count. I don't understand why it won't count. I don't know whether it's going to be any different for other departments.
Okay. Is the 3.7 GPA requirement for molecular genetics referring to every single year of undergrad studies or the cumulative?
It's a cumulative GPA, and then we look at that, and we also look at your last year GPA, and they both have to be over a certain level. And I think it's explained in detail on the website. It's calculated, you know, at the administration level. But you know, if it was close, we would still look at your application.
Do you only look at 2-year GPA cumulative?
No, we look at the whole transcript, but the upper year marks are more important.
What are the deadlines for the application of the next round?
It's on our website. I think it's in October for the January deadline.
Yeah, ours would be September 15th for a January deadline.
Gen doesn't have a January deadline. We have 2 admission cycles that are functionally the same. We only accept students to enter in September, so our January admissions deadline is January 15th, and we have a spring cycle on May 1st, but both of those are for September entry.
I would really think that, you know, because there are 3 different programs you're presenting and we do have our own deadlines, just check on the website for the dates so you don't miss it.
I'm not sure if this can be answered, but although a B+ average is needed to be considered for molecular genetics, are the students who are getting admitted typically accepted with higher marks?
Well, some of them definitely would be, but I mean, you qualify if you've got the B+ average, right? So we would look at your whole application. So if you just made the B+, but you had some lab experience and you had really strong references, then you would get in. If it was borderline, but then, yeah, maybe you didn't, you know, we didn't have much else to go on in terms of experience, or the references were not outstanding, then you might not get in.
Will another seminar like this happen soon, and it will be recorded and sent to all attendees? For incoming fourth-year students, should we apply for the January or spring deadline for medical genomics?
There's really not an enormous difference between the January and May deadlines. We capture different types of students in those two application cycles. If you're ready to go in the winter, I would encourage you to apply early when there's still sort of 20 to 22 open seats available. Just slightly increases your chances of getting in, and we do get more applicants in the spring cycle, but they're both for a September entry. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which you apply for.
And the other question, is it possible to receive or the email address for the MD program? I will send you the recording, and it was addressed in her presentation. And I'll answer one, and I'll say one more question. How many students are accepted for the September 2022 Medical Science Master's Program?
We do not have a cap on the number of students who are being accepted, as long as you're able to find a supervisor to work with. So there is no cap.
Perfect. Okay, and we're going to go into the next session. Thank you so much, all the panelists. The next session is meeting MD and graduate students, and I will make those students panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Natasha.
much, everyone.
Natasha.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I got everyone here. So I have Hugh Huang for MD student, Hafsa Zia, MD student, Quinn Bonafiglia from Laboratory Medicine Pathobiology, Reuben Samson from Molecular Genetics, Alumna, Naomi Zingman-Daniels, and I guess Michelle will stay on, I guess, and she is a PhD student from Institute of Medical Science. So each person can give a 5-minute presentation and introduction about yourself, and I will start with Hua Huang.
Hi everyone, my name is Hugh Huang. Yeah, and my Chinese name is Zhongyu Huang. And I'm a second-year international medical student at the University of Toronto Medical MD program. So just a small background about myself. So I finished my undergrad at the University of Macau. So Macau is a city in China near Hong Kong. And my major is biomedical sciences. And after that, I applied to the U of T MD program in 2020. And for the first year, like the whole program was online. And due to my visa application, I stayed in China for a whole year to study, which was a very unique experience. And it's also very it was very stressful, I'd say, because there is a 12-hour time difference between Canada and China. But luckily, I met a lot of nice people in the program. The classmates I met were super nice, and they have this kind of random or frequent checking with me. Like they may just send a message to me, and checking how I feel, how I'm doing now. And for the staff I met, because we have certain registration requirements. However, I can't finish them due to some like limitation, because like immunization, some vaccines were not provided in China for adults. So like they have a very flexible, like I would say, when you are in trouble, they are like very flexible to you, and so feel free to reach out to any of like your classmate or faculty staffs when you need help. And for the whole year, I would say like MD program at the University of Toronto like gave me a lot of opportunities. Sorry about the background noise. Like I have a cat, and now she found something really interesting and she's playing with it now. But continue with our my introduction. And so for the opportunities I have at the University of Toronto MD program, we have like a MD program Facebook page, and all the MD students are in this page. So like they posted like different opportunities each day, and you have like research and volunteer, and also like work opportunities which you can apply to like anytime. And in addition to that, like all the, I would say the contents, like the basic knowledge are delivered in like various way. We have like the basic knowledge part, the basic foundation knowledge, and also the anatomy, and also different like skill like session, including like clinical skill, which you can practice your communication skill with your patients, and CBL sessions, which are like case-based learning. You can like work with your classmates to approach different cases. And also we have like this kind of like health community session, which you will like approach different social determinants. Those are the topics I would say really like different from other med schools, which like U of T highlights a lot and can help you like understand the MD, this role as a, I would say, a comprehensive and overall perspective. And I really appreciate all the opportunities and help I have in this program. And I'm looking forward to meeting any of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Hua. If any of the panelists feel comfortable, you can show your screen as well and show your video. The next person is Hafsa Zia, and if you can show.
Sorry, it sounds like you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't show your video. You can't show your.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's the same problem I'm having. It's saying the host has stopped it.
Oh, they have to. You have to be a co-host to be able to show video streams, I think.
They can't even. I mean, they can't show their like turn on their video and show your face.
Yeah. I think when you're in a webinar mode, you have to be changing the setting to co-host to stream the videos.
Oh, can we see 1 second? Make co-host. Let me see if I can make that work. Let's see here. Wait a minute, 1 second. Permissions. Okay. Co-host. Okay. 1 second. Perfect. It works.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you want me to get started?
Yeah.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Hafsa Zia. I am going into my second year here at the MD program at U of T in September. I did my undergrad in life sciences at Ontario Tech University, formerly known as UOIT. So it's a university here in Oshawa, which is currently where I'm at. So I got in after I finished, well, I applied during my fourth year and I got in after I finished my undergrad. I don't think I applied broadly. I applied to a couple of universities here in Ontario, but fortunately, U of T was the only one that gave me an interview. So I was super fortunate that they saw my potential as a candidate and interviewed me. And I think that transparency is important. Obviously, it's amazing when people can get multiple interviews. It's a huge accomplishment, but I think it's important to highlight that sometimes you shoot your one shot and that one shot ends up working out. So I'm super thankful for U of T for giving me that opportunity. I think, sorry, I don't want to tell me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but Hugh, was that right? Yeah, so I think he gave a pretty comprehensive overview of the MD program, so I can give a different perspective. I think med school is challenging in its own ways. There's obviously a lot of information that just gets piled on you. That gets really challenging. But this year, the unique set of challenges were really just brought on by Zoom. And I think anyone who's done any sort of online schooling knows exactly what we're talking about. The most difficult part has been connecting with classmates. I think everyone misses those hallway conversations where, you know, like after a test, I do my test, I shut down my laptop and I go take a nap, and I have no idea how anyone else feels about the test. Whereas if you were to do it in person, I'd see everyone worried or happy and be like, oh, okay, so I feel the same way, we're on the same page. So it's been difficult missing out on that. But I try to think of it as in the bigger picture that we're very privileged to, you know, be where we are right now, get our vaccines, and hopefully soon in September, things will be returning back to normal. In terms of more about me, I like reading, I like running, I like cooking, very basic things. Those are what I like to do in my free time. This year, actually, I've been planning my wedding. So it's been really interesting doing school alongside that, but it's definitely possible. And that's one of the things I really like about med school and U of T in general is that it's pass fail. So I don't have to worry about getting like a 99% or scoring high in order to secure like a good residency or whatever. I can focus on school, but then I can also focus on all the other commitments I have in life. And that balance really motivates me to do better in school. So yeah, I think that's my short little blurb.
Okay, thank you, Hafsa. So next we're going to the graduate students. Quinn Bonafiglia can present an intro.
Hey everyone, my name's Quinn. Yes, I'm the first person to speak from the graduate side. I'm currently a fourth-year PhD student in Dr. Michelle Bendek's lab at the Faculty of Medicine, and more specifically in the department called LNP, which stands for Laboratory Medicine and Pathobiology. So as a graduate student, I'm doing a research project, a research thesis. And my project is focused in cardiovascular research. And more specifically, it's looking at a new mouse model of a condition called pulmonary hypertension. So it's a condition that affects the lungs and also the right side of the heart. So my research involves using live mice, and we do a variety of different techniques, including one called echocardiography, which is ultrasound of the heart of mice, which is pretty cool. I have a spin-off project as well, which is inducing the same sort of condition, pulmonary hypertension, through surgical means. So we do surgery on the mice, and we also collect tissues and study cells for sort of more traditional molecular studies. And a bit more about my background. Before doing my PhD here at U of T, I did my undergrad and master's at Queen's University in Kingston. So for my master's, I was also doing a research project, and it was actually focused on the GI tract, and which might seem like it was a totally different organ system, but actually when you zoom in, the smooth muscle cells of the gut are act quite similarly to the smooth muscle cells of the blood vessels, which is what the current lab I jumped to studied. So it was actually not as wild as a jump as it might sound. But making that jump and choosing U of T to do my PhD was a very easy decision for a variety of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into when we get to the question period. But for a couple of reasons, one was that the environment seemed like the best environment to really have a fully enriched and high quality research potential, and also an environment where I was really well supported by my colleagues and by other potential collaborations I could make with all the different networking of groups around me. And secondly, that the environment allowed for professional development, not outside of academia. So I wanted to come to Toronto because it was really well positioned to learn more about potential jobs after graduation and network with individuals in the industry as well. And then beyond my studies, during my PhD, I've also been involved in a number of extracurriculars like various student council groups and various sports teams, which is also another plus of coming to U of T for my PhD. Yes, that's all I've got to say for now.
Okay, thank you, Quinn. Yeah. So next is Reuben Samson from Molecular Genetics.
Hi, everyone. My name is Reuben, and I'm a fifth-year PhD student in the lab of Dr. Anne-Claude Gingras at Mount Sinai Hospital. I am in the molecular genetics department, and much like Quinn, I'm also a thesis-based research student. So We've got a main project that we end up doing, which mine is to use a proximity biotinylation approach, or essentially an ability to find neighborhood proteins nearby a protein that you're interested in studying, as we look at the process of cellular reprogramming. That's the acquisition of pluripotency, or making induced pluripotent stem cells. I think my spiel is very similar to Quinn's in general, in the sense that, you know, the Department of Molecular Genetics, if you've looked it up, is actually quite large. Over 120 faculty that we have. It's 120 different research labs in a variety of different focuses and fields. If you want to study genes, proteins, their regulation, you want to study model organisms, and pretty much anything in between, from cancer to, you know, how neurons are made and developed, pretty much anything can be done in our department. And I think that was the biggest draw for me when I was applying for graduate studies. I did my undergraduate degree also here at the University of Toronto. So I've been here for quite some time, but I thoroughly enjoyed the challenge, the type of environment that we're in, the research potential that this department and U of T has as a whole, and that's why I stuck around. I think, again, alongside Quinn, I've had the opportunity to be part of a multitude of different sports teams, student council groups, of course, being a graduate ambassador, things like that, being very familiar with those concepts, you know, really does help network, open your eyes to why it is that you want to do what you came here to do. Yes, U of T and MoGen, molecular genetics, I call it MoGen, is very tough. There's by no means a small decision to be made here for those of you who are interested in pursuing graduate studies. But there's a lot of opportunities that you can pursue once you decide to complete your master's or your PhD. One last little thing about me, for those that might be in the same boat as I was when I first started. No, I did not complete my my undergraduate studies in 4 years. I did it in 4.5. And I started as a January start student. So I did not start with the rest of the cohort in September. So I'm off by a little bit. And I also do not have a prior master's degree. So I did reclassify directly from the master's into the PhD program without getting a master's degree. And so I'm a PhD candidate without a master's. That's just a little bit about me, and again, happy to take any questions.
Okay, and next will be Michelle Dubinsky from Institute of Medical Science.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can see me now. So I am a PhD student in my 5th year in the Institute of Medical Science. So a little bit of my background: I did my undergrad at McMaster University in Hamilton. Then I moved further to the west for London, Ontario at Western. I did my master's there, and now I'm doing my PhD in the IMS. So I do have a lot of experience in Ontario universities, if that helps. So my PhD research is on cardiovascular epigenetics. I'm in Philip Marsden's lab. And so what I look at is really kind of in vitro model, so out of the mouse model or out of the typical animal model. And we've developed a specific blood flow system where we can look at blood flow on cells in a different way. So that's what my research stems from. And it's actually very similar. It's kind of like molecular genetics. I do molecular biology and biochemistry on a daily basis. And so that was my PhD. That is my PhD work. My master's work was looking at a particular protein that's involved in cancer and Alzheimer's. And so I really thought, you know, I did a couple of years. My master's was 2.5 years on protein, and I decided to take it back in the central dogma of, you know, DNA to RNA to protein. And now I mostly work on DNA and RNA. And so U of T was a great jump for me because of the huge variety, breadth, and depth of research, especially in the Institute of Medical Science. When Reuben was saying his program is big, IMS is much bigger. So we have about 500 faculty members. And the IMS is fantastic because it prides itself on translational research. So from bench to bedside. So there's kind of what I do is very molecular, but we have students, a friend of mine who works with addiction and mental health. And so it's a completely different thing, and that's all within the IMS, as well as people who work on bone regeneration, for example. As everyone said, I'm going to pick up on that. The U of T has a great community of researchers, but also ways to get involved. So things like student councils or, student groups, as well as sports and recreation. I dance, so I teach dance classes for the university, for example. There are other things to do. I also TA, so that is an opportunity as a graduate student to get some teaching experience, as well as going to international conferences. So many ways to enrich your graduate experience that's not just within the research. The PhD itself is also, it is time consuming, but you do want to give yourself kind of that work-life balance, as Hafsa mentioned, in terms of actually having a life in addition to your schooling, because the PhD is a long process. So, I call it a marathon, not a sprint. So that's something to really think about. You want to keep your mental health at the forefront of it all. Nice to meet everybody here.
Thank you, Michelle. And we have an alumna here from Translational Research Program, Naomi Zingman-Daniels.
Got to unmute myself. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you guys. My name is Naomi. I graduated from the Translational Research Program, which is a professional master's program. I defended in August of 2020 and officially graduated in November of 2020. I was supposed to graduate the semester before, but as I think a lot of us experience, there are little hitches in something called COVID-19, which my thesis got delayed right as it was going to ethics review. So we were a couple months late on that. But really enjoyed my time there. So for my background, I am from the US. So if anyone is interested in what it's like as an international student from the US, because that is kind of a different situation than other international students, happy to answer any of those questions. So I got my undergrad degree in about 3 years, but I got the credits. So as mentioned previously, it generally just counts the credits. I worked in a translational research center in Boston for about 2 years, realized that I loved the research, but I didn't want to be a research assistant for my entire life. I was having a lot of fun with it at 23, wanted something a little bit more advanced by 43. So I decided to apply to the program for a number of reasons, both since I'm interested in health science and health technology, what that field looks like in Canada. And the Translational Research Program is an extremely applied program. So it was a great program where, within the first year I worked with, I want to say either 3 or 4 local Toronto hospitals, really got a chance to apply the things that we were learning and apply that research in a very real manner. And as somebody who learns very hands-on, it's something that I really enjoyed. Despite being a master's program, professional master's program, there was a huge amount of research involved, both quantitative and qualitative. Most people did mixed methods. My thesis, or my capstone, focused on pediatric trauma and the care of pediatric trauma in Ontario. Since then, or during my master's, I also worked with actually the medical education program as the residency administrator for cardiac surgery at U of T. So I got to see couple of different areas of graduate schooling, and additionally got a Mcat internship and helped found a nonprofit during COVID for looking at distributing PPE to people from Toronto and eventually across Canada who needed more access to PPE and weren't the recipients of most of kind of the very popular funds. So it was a great way to be able to get the research experience and the professional experience that I wanted to. I now manage clinical research at an AI breast cancer detection company, which I really, really enjoy. It's exactly where I wanted to be after my master's degree. So very grateful for my time at U of T.
Thank you so much, Naomi. And so we're going to go through a series of questions, and I guess a couple from the MD and a couple from the graduates program can answer. So the first question is, why did you pick the Temerty Faculty of Medicine? So any volunteers?
I can go first if no one's if no one's going. Again, I really think the Faculty of Medicine has a fantastic breadth and depth of research. I keep using those words, but also U of T is one of the top schools in Canada. If not, I forget what the rankings are for in the world. I know it's up there though, and it prides itself on research. And so being a researcher, especially, you know, having gone to school in Canada, being a Canadian, I wanted to be at U of T, especially for the PhD. So that's one of the things. The other thing is also looking into, for grad school, what type of work you want to do and whose lab you want to be in. And so that's also something to look into. It's not necessarily the school only. The school helps, and U of T is huge and is well known everywhere. So you can always branch off from that. And if someone, you know, looks at your CV or resume later on and says, oh, you did your PhD at U of T, they know that name. So that's definitely helpful. It also, for me, was the lab I wanted to work in was at U of T. The supervisor I wanted to work with was at U of T. So I was like, I guess I'm going to apply to U of T and be there.
Anyone from the MD or another grad program?
I joke that I didn't choose U of T. U of T chose me because it was the only school that interviewed me, so I don't have much of an answer for that.
Yeah, I want to say the same thing. Like for international students, like I remember only McGill and the U of T like admits like international students. So yeah, U of T, right?
Okay, next, what is the application process like?
I guess I can. You know what? Go ahead. Start with the MD. Go for it.
Okay, I can like talk about the application process for MD program. So usually in July, like the application is open, and you can see like different like the details in different universities' websites, and then you are going to go to like sign up for an account in OMSA. It's the Ontario Medical School application system. Yeah, I think that's the name. And then for U of T, I remember you need to submit like ABS, which is the autobiographical statements, and also like your brief personal essays and some like recommendation letters and GPA things. And the application will be closed. For us, it's the first date of October. So you need to check and double check the deadline date, and it's pretty strict. So if you like if the deadline is over, then you cannot submit any like application. And the interview invites will be released in January or February. And the interviews will be held in February or March. And for international students, the results will be released in late April, and the domestic student admission results will be released in May. And all those information can be found in the U of T MD website. And if I said anything wrong, Hafsa, feel free to correct me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I can talk about the generic kind of application process for, I guess, a research stream style master's or PhD program. Very similar to most types of applications. Depending on where you go, they may have some other small restrictions or things that they prefer or like. But in general, what they're looking for is to see your transcript or your grades. They're also going to be looking for typically a letter that you're going to be writing that's about 1 page, sometimes 2 pages, as to why you would like to join that department. What makes you fit for graduate studies, or why are you pursuing graduate studies itself? Then, of course, there's going to need to be at minimum 2 references. Sometimes they may require a third. And typically these references, they would like it to be an individual who can talk a bit more about your skill set or what you can bring to graduate studies. Of course, if you had research experience, since you're moving into a research stream-based master's or PhD program, they'd want to get a reference from an individual whose lab that you potentially worked in if you had the opportunity to do research experience. It is by no means, as you probably heard already, an absolute requirement, but it is a high recommendation to have a little bit of research experience, whatever that might be. Most people are afraid and say, I only have 4 months, I only have 6 months, I only have 1 year. That's 1 year, 6 months, 4 months more than what most people have the opportunity to get. You'll hear a lot of individuals say, oh, I was in a lab for 2, 3, 4 years. And that is phenomenal. That's very rare. So if you can find a level of research experience, especially in your 3rd or 4th year, that would work towards your benefit in your application for both the reference side as well as what you bring to the table in terms of your CV/resume. Outside of that, the application process moves forward, and some departments may ask you for an interview. Others will accept you on the spot. And I won't go into it, but I'm sure you know that there's a variety of different deadlines that you can have. And each program has their own methods of bringing in new students. So if you want more information on molecular genetics specifically, I can answer that separately.
Anyone else? Okay.
One thing I do want to mention, Reuben, you did a great overview of everything. So IMS, Institute of Medical Science, is very similar. Another thing would be a letter of intent. And so that, and I think Mogen has that as well. I think a few programs do, and that's where you can say kind of what research you want to do, why you're interested in the program, what you bring to the table, so you can talk a little bit more about your research experience, because, you know, on your CV, you say I worked in so-and-so's lab and I did such and such. You can talk more about kind of what you learned from that, etc. As well as for the IMS, you can say any supervisors you've contacted, because you don't need a supervisor for entry. And I don't think you do in molecular genetics either. I think you might in LMP, but those are things, Quinn knows better, but those things are things to discuss in your letter of intent. Another thing you can discuss is if you didn't have great grades in 1 year, those are things you can talk about as well in your letter of intent.
Okay, you want to say something, Quinn?
Yeah, I'll just say you
Sure.
don't need a supervisor right out of the gates, but you do by the time you start your schooling, I believe. So it's not rotational.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next question. What have you enjoyed most about medical graduate school?
I can start with this one. So speaking for the graduate school part, the thing I've enjoyed most about doing my graduate school is the problem-solving journey of doing research. So when you start a research project, especially if you're doing like a master's, usually the problem you're trying to solve is quite laid out for you. And even your PhD is usually quite clear how to start. But I'm in my 4th year. I think some other people here are in their 5th year. So the longer you go, the more different paths you take, and the more you realize how you're actually going to solve this problem and what to do next. So I think the thing I've enjoyed most about that is how to get used to solving these really complex problems and how to figure out what the next steps are and how to solve those problems. And also failing along the way is like a huge part of doing research and trying to problem solve. But yeah, that's a really quick answer for what I've enjoyed most.
How about MD?
There you go. My favorite part has been learning all of the clinical stuff. So how to interact with patients, how to perform physical exams. Even though we learned all that through Zoom, it's just been really fun. Well, I found clinical skills really fun because when I imagined med school, this is what I imagined, having to hopefully in the future start interacting with patients and making hopefully a difference in their lives and helping them. So that training aspect is probably the best, because I think that's where you really feel like you're a med student. It's a unique part of med school that you don't get to experience everywhere else. And also anatomy, although we didn't really get to, because of COVID again, we didn't really get to use, use cadavers for our anatomy sessions, but still we did have some, I think dissections is what they call pro sections. I'm not sure, I'm confusing the two terms, but basically wherein everything has already been dissected for you and you can just go in and examine it. That's also been really unique to the MD program.
Okay. The next question is, how did you prepare for medical graduate school admissions?
I can speak again from the MD perspective. So as Hugh mentioned earlier, you have to, for as you're applying, you have to write some essays for U of T and I think a couple of other schools too. Those usually come out July of the year that you're applying. So OMSAS is due in October and these essays usually come out around this time, like mid-July. And so as soon as they came out, I didn't start writing, but I did start brainstorming a lot of the ideas and what I wanted on the essay. So a lot of these questions, you have to read them a couple of times because they're a little confusing. And so I would discuss them with like my family and friends, get their ideas and their perspectives and sort of start brainstorming and jotting some ideas down. And so when I started writing my essays, which was late August, early September, I wasn't just going in empty-handed. I kind of knew what I wanted to write. And so it was easier to go from there. And the other thing is your referees, you should contact them as early as possible, just because, you know, they could be writing multiple reference letters or they might be busy or any X number of reasons. So I also contacted them like late August so that they had at least a month to write my references. And other than that, I think for everything else, for all the extracurriculars and things you put down, I think I don't really know when you would start preparing for that. I think it's like anything you've ever done. So there's no real preparation for that.
How about
And
graduate?
sorry.
Go on. Go on, Paul.
I can talk more about it because I think Galaxy asked one question about any tips for MD application brief personal essay. And so in our application, we need like 4 brief personal essays, but I just took a look and this year you only need like 2 essays. But for all those essays, like I think Hafsa already like gave really like good advice. You also need to like keep modifying them. Like if you write it today, then you need to like review it like a few days later because you may change your mind or you may find something really like not appropriate or you can like add something more. And in addition to that, like U of T has a 4 cluster evaluation criteria, including like professionalism, communicator, and advocate and scholar. Make sure in your essays, you need to reflect any of them or like one of them or a few of them. So that's like, I would say the most important criteria, like U of T gonna like review you or like evaluate you as an applicant.
So I just want to add one more thing, which is something that I thought was really valuable. So every school, like I went to Ontario Tech, they have this career center, or not even career center, I think it's writing center where you can go and get your essays checked. And so for me, that was really helpful because I'm not the best with grammar. And so once I wrote my essays, I went to that center and they really helped go. I mean, they didn't help me with the content, but they did help me with maybe like, this is more grammatically correct, or maybe you could put a comma here or whatever. So that really helped me because it made me more confident about my essays that, you know, it wasn't poor grammar that would like get them kicked out, but I think anything other than that. So check your universities. I think every single university has that and it's usually a free resource. So definitely utilize it.
Anyone from the grad programs?
Sure, I think really, as Hafsa said, in terms of references, that's really kind of the main thing. Make sure you give your referees enough time to plan and to send in your documentation, as well as to try and get references that really know who you are as a person. I mean, course references are great if you have a professor, but you know, if you were in a class of 200, is this professor really going to know you? Yeah, you got an A in the course, but how can they speak to you as a person in terms of your skill at research, in terms of your, you know, creativity and innovation? So you want to think about people that know you well. For the IMS, references have to be faculty members. So that's something to keep in mind. If you helped me as a PhD student with a research project, I unfortunately can't give you a reference. It would have to be the PI in the lab. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The PIs will talk to grad students, but they're the ones who have to write the letter, at least for the IMS. So I think that's one of the harder parts. The other things are the letter of intent, which is not too hard to write if you know why you want to go into research and whatnot, if you've contacted professors. And then there's transcripts, and then there's, you know, you might get an interview as well, depending on if you're on the fence or not. All international students usually do get interviews to see where they are. And then you will need a supervisor if you're an international student. So again, references I think are the hardest part for the application. The rest is pretty straightforward. And I know on the IMS website, it gives you detailed information about what you need to submit.
For the TRP, things are slightly different. So, and I may, if it's okay with the moderators, I may take a second to do a little bit more of an explanation of the TRP because it is kind of an unusual program. So as mentioned, it's a professional program. It generally has classes just a couple of days a week. It's very self-directed because as a professional program, they're expecting that of the about 20 to 30 students that are in each cohort, so much smaller than Michelle's program. It's a very small program. And it's very self-directed. For the first year, it's course-based. For the second year, it's capstone-based, and you're expected to finish that capstone in about 18 months. It's very open as to what it can be, given that the whole premise is bench to bedside. You find a problem that patients need solving. So because the TRP program in particular, pretty much every project is collaborative. There's going to be maybe one or two projects you do completely solo, but in general, you're going to be learning how to work with a team. The interview probably has a little bit more of an effect than in other graduate programs, at least when I was applying, that was my experience, just because it is important for them to understand how well you work with people. And the interview, again, I have now interviewed about 3 years ago, but it was a lot of, asking about your collaboration skills, asking about what you've done. If you've only ever worked in group projects where it was undergrad and everybody was terrible, that will not be a point against you. It's just about how you work with other people. So even if everyone's already let you down, that's not going to count against you. Sorry. That's my foster cat. But it's a pretty normal, I would say, master's application. You send in, as mentioned, some essays, some short answer questions, and some references. And then they're pretty fast. I think that I had my answer by sometime in March, which is pretty average, at least for the US. It's the one time she's ever come on my desk, sorry guys. But yeah, it's pretty in line, especially for the US in terms of what you can expect in terms of timeline.
Okay. So next question, what are the major challenges in medical school, graduate school?
I can start with this one. Again, speaking for the graduate school. So two of the major challenges that come to mind are, one is shifting your sort of how you work from undergrad to graduate school. So there are courses you have to take in graduate school, both if you're doing a master's and also usually if you're doing a PhD, you do have to take courses. But really the bulk of your time should be spent doing your actual research project. The courses are definitely important, but it's not like undergrad where you're trying really hard to get good marks. It's sort of a shift now to focusing a lot on your research project and also attending those classes. So that shift is one challenge. And then a second challenge that also comes to mind is self-motivation is a really important skill for graduate school. And it does vary from lab to lab on how strict supervisors are and if they expect you to stick to a particular schedule. Mine doesn't, so I can show up sort of on my own schedule, but by extension, that means you have to be self-motivated to make sure that you're getting your tasks done and progressing sort of on your own. Both of those things are definitely things that you can work towards and aren't too challenging, but those are the two major challenges that come to mind.
I can talk representing MD program. So I think one of the major challenge I faced is like to keep your pace, because in like MD program, like we have like ME, which is the mastery exams every week or every 2 weeks. So we will finish a block like dermatology like this week, and the next Monday we will have an exam like to test it. So you need to keep your pace, like for example, like attend those lectures and attend courses and review for your contents like in a regular speed or pace. And although we have like a self-care day, if you feel like really stressed, you can apply like those self-care day, but you need to make sure that like you always keep your pace and don't like leave anything. Like if you like study, crush all the things like on Sunday, like, and go to the exam like on Monday, which may be very, very stressful. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. How did you pick a supervisor?
I can start that one, but I think it would, oh, no, go ahead, Reuben. That's totally fine.
Okay, I mean, for molecular genetics, at least, I think Quinn mentioned this a little earlier, you don't need to have a supervisor when you apply. For molecular genetics, you don't even need to have a supervisor from the time that you start. We do have a rotation program, which now a lot of other departments have as well, which very briefly, as you probably heard already, means you spend a certain amount of weeks. For us, it's 5 weeks in 3 different labs before you make your final decision come, let's say, the end of December, if you start in September. And so taking that little bit of opportunity in that time to figure out whether or not the lab is right for you, the type of projects, the type of science, the environment, the supervisor, their relationship with their students, postdocs, so on and so forth, will help you make that decision. At least that's what the rotation program will provide to you. And for me, it was a combination of all of those, which somehow fit perfectly as a jigsaw puzzle. And I was able to say, this is the best opportunity for me to succeed in my program. I had a fantastic time talking with the supervisor. The project seemed great. The lab environment was fantastic. I knew I was going to have some mentorship from the older students and postdocs in the lab. So those all made my decision very, very easy, including the project, which happened to be really interesting and really cool at the time. Still is, sorry. And you know, if you don't have that opportunity for a rotation system, then how do you make that decision? How do you make that choice? It would be setting up those meetings, talking to the PIs, finding the grad students in the lab and emailing them and saying, hey, what's your experience like? Can you tell me a little bit more? Attending these sessions, not just this one, but the specific sessions for your graduate departments, where graduate students from this department will talk to you more about their program, their lifestyle, and how things kind of work. So a little inkling for graduate students on how you can potentially find the right supervisor or the right lab.
He said it all. The IMS doesn't have a rotation system, but exactly what Reuben said, you know, before starting in the program, or you can get in and not have a supervisor yet for the master's. When you're interviewing the supervisor, it's not just the supervisor interviewing you, it's you interviewing him or her as well. Make sure you meet the lab members, because the research is important, but at least for me, the research wasn't everything. It was important to get the right fit in the lab, to make sure there's senior students that can help you out, or postdocs, to make sure that, you know, you work well with the supervisor, with the team, with even the research institution, for example, that they have the supports that you would need. So do think about it. Yes, you're being interviewed, but also you should interview the supervisor, the lab, to make sure it's the right fit, because you don't want it, especially for a PhD, right? If I wasn't happy, it's 5 years, if not more. You want to make sure that you're happy about that, and that you enjoy coming to work every day, or, you know, school work. It's kind of, in grad school, it's very similar. It really is kind of, to some people it's work, to some people it's school. I think it's a bit of both. So it's a happy marriage of the two. You want to make sure you're happy every day.
Okay, next question. What is your overall experience at the Temerty Faculty of Medicine?
I can speak from a med point of view. So like I said, this year has been really challenging with everything being online through Zoom, but the whole faculty has been so accommodating, and it's been really reassuring to see that. Like, for example, towards the end of the year, when we got to May, we had a couple of tests left, and everyone was really burnt out. Like we've had so many tests, everyone was feeling isolated, the effects of the pandemic. And I think at this point in May, like things were just looking grim too. So everyone was just really tired and burnt out. And so they were super accommodating about that. They let us move up our test dates if we, you know, felt that we weren't mentally prepared, or if we had a lot going on, or if any of our family members were affected by COVID or anything like that, even if you just wanted to take a self-care day, they were super accommodating to that. And that was really reassuring to see, because even if I didn't take that self-care day, it was just comforting knowing that I had the option to do so. And in terms of anytime we needed anything from the faculty, whether it was financial help or, literally anything, they've always been so helpful. And they don't just email you and be like, okay, whatever, here you can check out all this stuff and sort of help yourself. They actually help you through it. So it's really reassuring to know that.
Yeah, just to echo what Hafsa said, they were really supportive and understanding. I think that, all of us kind of starting in the pandemic and having no idea what was going to happen was definitely, in a very weird way, kind of a bonding experience. But I know that the Faculty of Medicine, I actually had to move back from Canada to the US during the pandemic for a family emergency. And the faculty was incredibly supportive in making sure that I could continue my studies, continue all of that without a hitch. And as I mentioned, I've worked in the med ed program as well as a residency admin. And I know that at least in my faculty, in the cardiac surgery faculty that I was working with, they just bent over backwards to not only accommodate their residents, but say, okay, if we're moving things digital, how can we add something a little bit extra that medical students and prospective medical students can access as well? Because they recognize that, hey, they're not going to get what they normally can. They're not going to get all of the experiences. So that was one thing that was really wonderful to see kind of throughout Temerty, was saying, okay, we're going to figure out a way to make sure that not only people get, what they're coming to school for, but that they, especially during this difficult time, can feel like they're still being actively engaged.
Okay, next question. What's the overall time commitment to research each week?
I think I'll start for that, and I can see Michelle chuckle a little bit too. So the basic line here is what you put into it is what you get out of it. Simply put, there will unfortunately be projects or times or periods of your graduate studies where you're going to have to put in more hours than you think is probably appropriate. But again, it's completely up to you, your supervisor, and your personal timeline. Of course, the timeline of the department to get you out as well, to say how much do you spend per day, per week, per month, or per year in the lab doing your work. There will be often times where you are a 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 student, 5 days a week, and you're in and you're out, you're done. And outside of those hours, that's your own personal life. Myself, unfortunately, I work with mammalian cell cultures and stem cells, so I have to be in at bare minimum every second day, if not every day, to feed my cells and keep them alive and happy and healthy. And I know how much hard work I can put into the lab, and I tend to go a little overboard personally. But how you set up your day, how you set up your week is completely up to you in terms of how you think your experiment or set of experiments is going to be set up. So in terms of how much time, it's what you would think is a typical 40-hour work week, plus maybe a little bit more if you're ambitious, if things are working well, keep going, work hard, and it will end up paying off for you. I don't know if anyone else has something they'd like to say about that.
Reuben always says it so well, but yes, I think really kind of the time you put in. And so there are weeks for me that are less busy, and there are weeks that are extremely busy. And so, some the weeks that are extremely busy, I'm working or I'm in the lab 7 days a week. And very similar to Reuben as well, my cells, I need to at least at minimum feed them every other day. But if I'm doing an experiment, my blood flow experiments, I have 4-hour time points. So that's just the experiment, but it takes me 2 hours to set up and 2 hours to clean up. So that's an 8-hour day right there, where the 4 hours while I'm doing it, I actually stagger things. So those are busier days. There are days for me when, I plan on doing something that's only 2 hours and then I have time to read. And so that's really important as well. And that's something that I find the longer you're in graduate school, you notice you're reading less, not because there's less out there, but because you're more focused on your project and moving things along. But it's always important, like even if you're reading papers, that doesn't mean you're not working. You're still working, you're just taking that time to learn about the new research that's in the field or going to a conference and things like that. It's not the same, you're not in the lab doing research, but you are still learning and you are still engaged. So do allow yourself to have those times, but it really depends. So, we do get some vacation. So definitely use your vacation time as well as vacation, because again, I think I mentioned here, it's a marathon, not a sprint in the PhD. And so it's really important to keep that in mind. As you go through, you don't want to burn out. And there are supports, and especially with COVID, the Temerty Faculty of Medicine, I'm going to plug them again a little bit. Their mental health supports have been a huge thing this year. There's the Graduate Student Wellness Grant for graduate students where the department or the faculty, is funding wellness initiatives in the faculty. So it's really great to see that support, especially through a difficult year.
Okay, next question. What potential careers can you get after graduate school? For medical students, what specialty would you like to get into?
I can start with this one again. So for careers after graduate school, if you were to sort of categorize it maybe a bit crudely, it's two branches really. There's academia, then non-academia. So academia means staying within school, so staying within academics. So usually your next steps would be looking, so if you're doing a PhD, for example, then your next steps would be to look for a postdoc, where you would go usually to a different school and work in a lab a bit more on your own, and then you'd be trying to become a professor. That's the typical academic route, but there are other jobs within academia like teaching and whatnot, or lab managing. And then the non-academic route is really, I don't think there's any bounds to what you can do. One may be more common option would be like jumping into the pharmaceutical industry. That's what a lot of life science graduate students do. But I think the soft skills that you learn from graduate school, so soft skills meaning things like communication and problem solving, those really can be applied to any sort of job. So I really think that that non-academic branch of what you can do after grad school is really quite broad.
How about the MD?
Yeah, I can go.
Or Michelle?
Or Hugh, go. Do you want to go, Hugh?
Yeah, you can go, Hafsa.
Oh, I can just mention, like, I haven't decided yet. So like we have like tons of opportunities like shadowing research, clerkship, and workshop. You can meet a lot of people, like a lot of specialists, and their stories and their words may just change your mind, and just don't worry too much about this.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm undecided. I like a lot of different specialties. I like different patient populations. So I'm not really sure. But in terms of careers, I think a lot of people don't know that you don't just have to be a medical doctor. Like you can, if you're really into research, you can sort of go down that pathway and, work on bench to bedside research. You could go into the industry and start, I don't know, designing like things to help medical things. I don't really know what it is, but medical things to help in the hospital. There's lots of different things. You can go into management. There's lots of different things that you can do with an MD, which is the cool part of it. That's very flexible as a career.
I'm going to add to what everybody said. And I think Quinn kind of gave the two, which is totally true. You kind of decide if you're going to do academia or non-academia. And so I like to give the example. A friend of mine did her master's in biochemistry with me at Western, and then she went into law. And now she didn't do patent law, which you would think that's what a lot of people do in science, but she works at the Parliament building in Toronto. So like she's a law, I don't think it's a law clerk. I should ask her the real term. So that's one of the things. Another friend of mine went to a startup, and now she's been working at a startup recently. You can also go into the pharmaceutical industry. There's also a lot of people now with kind of the PhD skills or the graduate skills go into consulting, because that's a lot of problem solving. So I'm trying to give kind of the weird ones, But it seems like there is a lot you can do, and it really depends on your interests and how you go that way. So endless possibilities.
Okay. One last question. What is one tip you can give to a potential applicant?
Bring yourself to the, oh, sorry, Hafsa, go ahead.
It's okay, you can go ahead. It's all good.
Bring yourself to the potential interview, especially, frankly, if you're looking at something that's a long period, as I think it was Michelle mentioned. You know, 5 years for a PhD, if you present somebody that isn't yourself, you're going to get really tired over the course of the 4 years, because you're going to be constantly having to put up that front. U of T, I felt really, really supportive as, even in what's a more non-traditional program. So definitely, like, make sure, and I think that, I forget if this is Hafsa or Michelle, but interview them back. Make sure that this is a place that you want to be at, because you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it should be a place that you're happy at too.
That's good advice. Mine is fake it till you make it. And what I mean by that is show up confident, even if you feel like you don't know anything, or you feel like you don't deserve a place there, or whatever it is you're feeling. Just tell yourself, I belong here, I'm meant to be here, and just power through it. Like, I remember during my interview, I didn't do the power pose because there were too many people in that bathroom, but I would have done it if there were less people. And during that interview, I was just like, you know, I'm just gonna pretend like I'm the best person here. I mean, don't be too cocky or anything, but like, you know, like, just be confident, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Confident in yourself and your abilities and the fact that you are meant to be where you are.
Yep. I will echo that very quickly and say that that idea of imposter phenomenon almost never disappears, even as a fifth-year graduate student mentoring every other grad student I have in my lab. So yes, if you're part of the 95% that feels that way, that's on purpose. It means that you are working hard and you're trying to make, and you're trying to be here. If you're the 5% that doesn't feel that way, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. But my personal suggestion is ask questions. Do not be afraid to ask those questions. As silly as you think that they are, always, always, always say, I don't know. It's never a shame to say that I don't know something, I'm unsure. That's why you're a student, and that's why there's a student next to your name or a candidate next to your name, because you are still in the learning process. You don't know everything, nobody does. So ask those potential grad students, ask the people in the lab, the professor, and so on and so forth. It may seem annoying, but we were in your shoes. We know what that's like, and we're happy, happy, happy to help.
Okay. This is a special question for, let's see, Naomi. Can you, did you answer this yet? Can you let me know when it would be can you let me know when it would make sense to go over your TRP's timeline? Someone asked, as Joseph couldn't make it today, but can you but want to make sure if it fits okay.
Yeah, so I just had wanted to double check on that. So I briefly mentioned it earlier. Happy to go over it a little bit more. The TRP, again, generally about a 2-year program. Some people go through the summer. If their research is taking a while, my year, pretty much everyone went through the summer because all the ethics boards shut down at the start of COVID, and you can't run a study with interacting with people if you don't have an ethics board. So that put a pretty significant delay in pretty much everyone from my year. Pretty much every other year has probably about half the people can graduate in June and half the people graduate over the summer. That is fine, and it is what they suggest to plan. You have a couple of core courses which go over things from soft skills to mixed methods research and statistics in research. Your first year, those really build the skills. And over the course of that year, you should be figuring out who you like to work with, because the capstone is with other classmates. So this is not something that you're doing a thesis on your own. I worked with 3 other phenomenal young women who all found jobs out of grad school. So a lot of that first year is really figuring out, you know, who do you work with? Who do you work well together with? Because there were definitely people that like I loved as people and we were not going to work together on our thesis because it didn't work. So it's very useful for that. There's also during the second year, you're generally supposed to be just working on your capstone as well as finishing up any modules, which are more minimal courses. There are some that are TRP specific. I, in particular, actually liked our intellectual property and law ones, which I didn't think that I would at all, as well as some electives, because they do want you to make sure that you're really experiencing the other fields that you're likely to work with. But the classes become a lot more minimal second year, kind of similar to a lot of the more research-based ones. You're doing a lot more reading and a lot more courses at the beginning, and you're really just dialing down on your research. In the second one, we have what is essentially a thesis defense, because it's a capstone, we can't technically call it that, at the end of the second year, as well as the report that you publish. So in many ways, it is kind of similar, but you are expected to work a lot more external with U of T. You should not be just within U of T for all of it. You should find those outside partners. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. So that's all the questions. I was wondering if Hannah had anything else to add.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to the student panelists for this great insight. I'm still having a problem. Maybe this time I can share my screen. I'm going to try one more time. Oh, great. I need to thank all the student panelists and the applicants for contributing your time. I know the last 2 years have not been an easy journey for all of you here, and sharing your insights pre-pandemic and during pandemic time was really helpful for me to hear too, like from an admissions and student service perspective. I hope everybody's summer and like the rest of future plans go really well. If you are an MD or graduate programs applicant, I hope the sessions that we provided for you are helpful. There will be more sessions this summer and fall. Hafsa and Hugh, I know, have said a lot of really helpful tips that I took notes on while you couldn't see me. And we'll make sure that when we're sending our presentations and information package out to this group, that you'll have their insights, at least for the ones that I was able to jot down in there as well. And then Natasha, thank you so much for your help in coordinating today. I know that I had a trouble not logging on at 12 on time. And so really thankful for your organization.
Thank you so much, everyone. And the event is recorded and will be sent to all students.
I just noticed like there's one question like still unanswered, but like
yeah, you can answer it.
But I can't. I don't know the answer. Maybe Hannah, if you know like the reason, maybe more about.
Yeah. So the seats are actually dictated by the tax funding from the provincial government. And so right now, we're only approved to have 259 seats at in Toronto. I know there are some conversations in works with the federal and the provincial government to expand medical seats across the province of Ontario, just beyond U of T. And so stay tuned. And if you are interested in the number of seats, we will post this information on our website annually. The number for the next foreseeable 2 to 3 years will remain at 259 domestic. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording.